Chapter 650. Asliers fiddled with his materialized fingers as he sat in the sand, bored out of his mind. It was difficult to search for a demon lord who had already landed in Eladia, but it was easy to locate the Abyssal Gate. As a gigantic teleportation spell that could cross between two worlds, not only did the activation of the Abyssal Gate require a huge amount of energy, it would also spread a unique aura of the plane. Asliers was very sensitive to this aura, and would be able to arrive before the demon lord landed. In front of the sand where the Lord of the Flames was entrenched, a hazy bubble appeared in the air, then it swelled and burst. Dark red energy propped up the huge abyss gate, and a huge claw stretched out from it, a powerful aura immediately overflowing. "It's here." Asliers looked up and could not help but be startled when he saw a familiar face. It was a standard demon body, covered in scales, with horns and fangs, but with two heads with different expressions. The twin demon Ninos, the king of the 763rd floor of the Abyss. The Lords of the Abyss had always been curious about Ninos. As everyone knew, the deeper the floor, the weaker the Abyss they came in contact with. The strong were often born in the first 100 floors of the Abyss, so how could the 763rd floor cultivate such a powerful lord? What was even more amazing was his rationality. The twin demon could perfectly resist the nature of killing and destruction. Compared to demons, he was more like a king among demons. Some people said that with Nino's wisdom and power, if he was born 20,000 years earlier, he might be qualified to compete for the throne of the Pillar God. Finding that Asliers was waiting for him, the twin demon was not surprised at all. Both heads smiled and calmly greeted the Lord of the Flames. "Long time no see, Asliers. I've heard about your achievements in Iradia. You actually killed our Kuntuda together with the dragon. I can't believe such a feat came from you." "Ninos, I remember that you serve Orcus, right?" Asliers stood up in the flames. "What, even the undead king can't wait anymore." "Not long after you left, I switched to serve under the Lord of the Dark Cloud." Ninos breathed in the air of the material world and stretched his body as he said, "But it's true that Orcus is also very anxious. The shadows at the bottom of the abyss are gradually deepening. None of the Pillar Gods are not anxious." "I think the Dark Cloud Lord is very angry, right?" "Of course, you're the Lord of the Abyss, and you should be our vanguard. Since you've already boarded and adapted to Iradia, you should help us open the door to the material world. But you used your strength on your own people." Ninos nodded. "Not just the Lord of the Dark Cloud, but for all demons, this is a very infuriating matter. How can there be our own people, who bite each other all day long?" Asliers shook his head. "Both of us have the blood of our own on our hands. In the Abyss, if you don't want to be killed, you have to kill others. I remember that before I left the Abyss, there were a few elemental lords who wanted to kill me. Times have changed." Ninos threw out a decree written in blood. "This is the joint will of the three Pillar Gods, forbidding the demon lords from killing each other. Although everyone is very dissatisfied with this decree, due to the pressure of the Pillar Gods and the lower levels, they have no choice but to comply. If you have the desire to destroy, then go to hell to vent it. Some time ago, we occupied the Skull Pillar, and now the entire first level of hell is in the hands of the demons." "It's indeed an unprecedented feat," Asliers nodded. "But it has nothing to do with me. It seems that you're determined to go against us. I really don't understand, Asliers. Back then, your strength was not at the top of the Lords of the Abyss, but in any case, you were still a demon who could barely resist the desire to destroy and was not controlled by your nature." The twin demons shook their heads. "You can even resist the nature that the will of the Abyss gave you. Why are you so muddle-headed here and don't know how to judge the situation?" "I see the situation very clearly," Asliers said. "No, you don't." Ninos quickly cut him off. "I'll repeat, we've occupied the entire first level of hell. As the teleportation gate to hell is gradually completed, There will be countless demon lords like you and me descending in the future. There will be more and more. Not just 1 or 2, but even 10 or 20 demon lords descending at the same time. How can you stop them, Asriers? I'll give you another piece of information for free. I'm not an idiot like Quintuta. If I'm not strong enough, I'll run. In human terms, I'll scram back to the abyss. But Graz ZT will not tolerate repeated failures. When I return, the next one to come in will be the brother of the Dark Cloud Monarch, the chained King Fortrick. You definitely won't want to see him. Aslier's expression did not change at all. He was very calm. Since I've made my choice, I'll do my best. Ninos was speechless. After a long silence, the twin demons sighed softly. I want to know what changed you. As a demon lord, you made such an inconceivable decision. Asliers thought for a moment. The 10,000 years in the abyss. Now that I think about it, it was terrible. All I wanted was endless battle, fire, and ashes. It was only when I came to the material plane that I realized that there were other things in my long life apart from killing and destruction. You're not going to say that this world is colorful and you want to protect it, are you? Ninos sneered. That's not it. I just realized that there are other things in life other than endless battles. There are some things that can be left undestroyed. Asliers suddenly asked, Have you seen light? What? You won't understand. Asliers continued, A moth that lives forever in the darkness will never understand a moth that has seen light. I understand. Ninos nodded. Their conversation seemed to be in a different dimension. You're just saying these words to hide the fact that you've become weak. You've already lost your demon heart. Asliers, your death is near. Thank you for your reminder. You scared me. In return, I'll tell you a piece of news. Asliers finally revealed his ferocity as the infernal monarch. Rolling tides of fire appeared on the other side of the horizon. Ninos, you can't go back. Your power and will remain in this world forever. I'll burn you to ashes. The twin demons roared. The demon kings of the abyss clashed and tore at each other in the boiling blood and fire. They used their lives as chips to sit at the gambling table. Chapter 651. When Khan came in, Caesar was sitting in the courtyard, taking a nap. His body was so huge that it was difficult for him to even enter the city. In order to stay in Monkville, he had no choice but to change his body and move around in the form of a half-dragon. Great Emperor! Khan knelt on one knee with his eyes lowered. The Black Emperor closed his eyes and rested his head on his left hand. His posture was very casual, but he also exuded a majestic aura that made it difficult for people to look at him directly. He was clearly sitting on a broken chair, but it looked like the throne of the world. When Khan rushed to Monkville, the battle between the Black Emperor and the gods was at its climax. Khan and his soldiers were intimidated by the terrifying power and pressure, not daring to approach. It was only when the Black Emperor crushed the gods with his unparalleled strength that Khan recovered from his shock. Without any resistance, he led his army into the majestic fortress known as the Gate of God's Sigh. You're here. Caesar opened his eyes, and there was a hint of fatigue in his vertical pupils. In order to keep all the projections of the gods here, he had no choice but to use the Emperor's order repeatedly, cutting the space into a dead zone with nowhere to run. It was an extremely heavy burden on his mind. Fortunately, he was satisfied with the outcome. No gods escaped from Monkville, and this assassination attempt was a complete failure. There were some sporadic resistance from the priests and fanatics of the various churches, but they were quickly suppressed. We have already taken control of Monkville, Khan reported in a suppressed voice. He had personally witnessed the Black Emperor crush the gods with his roar. At this moment, his feelings were very complicated. There was fear, yearning, and respect. He knew very well that even if he had the bloodline of the Black Dragon and the power of the Fire Demon Monarch, it would have been difficult for him to achieve that level before he was 1,000 years old. As for Caesar, it was said that the Black Emperor was not even 300 years old. The Black Dragon nodded absent-mindedly. Khan continued, "We discovered that many people have escaped. When you were fighting the gods, many people escaped from the other exits of Monkville. Among them, there was no lack of nobles carrying large amounts of treasure and secret magic scrolls. Your Majesty, should we send people to pursue them? Let them escape." Caesar shook his head. "Let them take this news and flee to the various major cities in the south. Flee to the capital of the empire where the sun never sets. Very soon, the people of the world will know that Monkville has been defeated and that the Pantheon has suffered a crushing defeat on the battlefield. Their unwavering faith will crumble because of this setback. From now on, the terrified and helpless Southerners will no longer be able to resist Black Wing's violent attack." "Understood." Khan's head was still lowered. "We have set up 23 camps to hold the captives and ordinary civilians of Monkville. They are waiting for you to deal with them. I will fulfill my promise to the Platinum Dragon God." Caesar said, "Read the laws of the Black Wing Empire to everyone, then release those civilians and let them do what they should do. As for the captives of the army, keep them under observation for a period of time, but do not mistreat them. Also, there is one more thing. Do not pursue the nobles and civilians who have escaped from Monkville, but clear out the scattered troops in the surrounding areas. To the humans, they have already lost their honor. In a situation where there are no restrictions, these people will quickly become something like wild beasts. The place that Black Wing takes over must have Black Wing's order. The Empire will not allow those things to exist." "As you wish, Your Majesty." Khan stood up and prepared to leave to convey the Emperor's orders to his subordinates. "I am very surprised. Until now, the God of Light and Fire has not appeared and participated in this siege." Black Dragon said in a low voice and looked up with a scrutinizing gaze. "Khan, my nephew, can you tell me why?" This was a test, Khan immediately realized. He stopped walking, thought for a moment, and said, "I guess there are some contradictions among the gods. The God of Light and Fire has declared that he wants to build a new divine kingdom. As a god who walks the earth, he has undoubtedly succeeded. However, this has taken away the faith that originally belonged to Pyro, and has also reduced the power of the empire on which the sun never sets." "Yes." Caesar nodded noncommittally. "You once told us that Notorious and Pyro are inextricably linked. He is very likely to be a god that Pyro has forcibly promoted. At such a sensitive time, why would the Sun Prime God waste his own power to help a mortal become a god?" Khan said calmly, "I have reason to believe that the God of Light and Fire is the weapon that Pyro used to deal with Black Wing." Black Dragon gestured for him to continue. "But this weapon has its own thoughts. He is not willing to be controlled by Pyro, so he chose to build his own divine kingdom and eat the faith of Pyro and the other gods to strengthen his own power. In Pyro's eyes, the awakening of Notorious's self-awareness is tantamount to a betrayal. The Sun Prime God must hate Notorious to the core. Once the other gods withdraw their hands from the shadows, the God of Light and Fire will be the next target to be exterminated. In this way, the reason why that guy did not make a move makes sense. He definitely does not want you to be killed by the other gods at this time. If it were not for the obstruction of the righteous and kind camps, I think the God of Light and Fire would even cooperate with us. Your attack has defeated Monkville and the other gods, causing the faith of mankind to completely collapse. But for Notorious, this is actually good news. As a god who walks on land, he will become the last and only hope of mankind. I think, when the news of your reign over Monkville reaches the south, not only will the God of Light and Fire not weaken, but he will also become stronger." Khan finished speaking in one breath. He looked at the Black Emperor's expression and cautiously reminded him, "If it were me, I would take measures against that so-called divine kingdom as soon as possible." "Very good." You are smarter than your father and also more ambitious. Caesar was not stingy with his praise and said with satisfaction, compared to my daughter, you may be more suitable to be the successor of the Black Wing Empire. Successor? Khan's eyes widened. He was so excited that he almost trembled. Although he bore the name of Tangerine, he was after all only the child of Garin and Caesar, and not the direct descendant of Caesar. Moreover, he had made a mistake some time ago, making a deal with the devil in exchange for power. Khan was already very grateful that the Black Emperor was willing to let the Fire Demon King pass on his inheritance. He could not believe that such a good thing would happen to him. He had received the Black Emperor's approval. Think carefully. If you want to become the king of the Black Wing Empire, you must perform well. Conquer the Rising Sun City, guard the Gate of the Abyss, counterattack the passage of the lunar eclipse. In every battle, you can only advance and not retreat. Are you afraid of death? Caesar said fiercely. Dying on the battlefield is the glory of an evil dragon, Khan said loudly. Very good. Come and receive your reward. The Black Dragon sat up straight. The ancestral Black Dragon bloodline, the Fire Demon Monarch's legacy, and my radiation. If you still can't become a powerful existence, it can only mean that you're a complete piece of trash. Khan did not hesitate and strode forward. Halfway through, he suddenly stopped. Then, what about Odin? Odin has her own path to walk. Speaking of his daughter, the Black Dragon's cruel face could not help but soften. In the depths of his right eye, a blazing and complete divinity flickered. I hope that she can become the King of Gods. Chapter 652. At the border of the sun-never-set empire, Ganwa, a small figure ran over quickly with the wind. In a flash, Bulonia had already sat down opposite her. She had always been like this. She was very close to Odin, never distant or polite. The black-winged princess wasn't surprised. She put down the book in her hand and lazily raised the corner of her eyes. What's wrong? You're still reading here. Bulonia was anxious when he saw her lazy appearance. I just received news that the great emperor descended on Monkville and defeated the walls of the sun-never-set empire overnight, shattering the conspiracy of the gods. This is exciting news. Odin's eyes curved into a smile. Dad never disappoints us. But Khan's army was also near Monkville at the time. He sneaked near the fortress and tried to blow it up. After the great emperor learned of his courage and strategy, he immediately summoned Khan to an audience and rewarded him a lot. Bulonia continued. He actually brought his army into the lone province? Odin thought for a moment and exclaimed, "It's a very bold move. This way, the Monkville fortress that Dad took down will be successfully taken over by Blackwing. Khan's army will affect the entire lone province. After losing supplies and reinforcements, the Dawn Legion will also retreat. There will be no reason to continue fighting us at the border." The point is, Bulonia looked worried. Khan has received the great emperor's affirmation and obtained the inheritance of the empire. He is an ambitious dragon and will definitely not let go of this opportunity. I hope what you said is true. Odin stretched. You don't know how hard it is to be an emperor. A few years ago, when Dad fell into a deep sleep, the lords of the royal court insisted that I sit on that iron chair. That period of time was like a year to me, but I can't let everyone down. If someone can replace me in this job, it would be great. Bulonia was stunned. He didn't expect Odin to be so resistant to becoming the emperor of the empire. All right. Not only did this news not worsen Odin's mood, but it also lifted her up and made her look very relaxed. She stood up and touched Bulonia's head, smiling. Let me tell you something interesting. A sketch was spread out on the table. Judging from the details, it was obviously the work of a skilled painter. From the picture, Bulonia could see that it was a middle-aged man. The painter used all his strength to portray him vividly. Adjectives like serious and solemn were very suitable for him. However, after looking at it for a while, Bulonia could not guess the intention of Odin to show her the picture. Could it be that the princess of the Black Wings had fallen in love with someone? No wonder she didn't want to be the empress, but this guy clearly looked like a human. She was only a head taller than the long table, and she had to stand on her tiptoes to lie on the table. Odin did not know what she was thinking. He said slowly, "Notorious, the god of light and fire." Bulonia was instantly relieved. He lowered himself a little and stopped tiptoeing. "Why are you reminding the gods at this time? Didn't you have a question last time? You said that Notorious was born 6 years ago. Why didn't he start moving until 2 years ago?" "So I went to investigate." Odin's face became a little cold. Bulonia rarely saw such an expression on her. 6 years ago, he launched an assassination attempt on my father and almost forced the Emperor of the Black Wings into a desperate situation. However, he was also severely injured because of this and has been recuperating all these years. So that's how it is. Bulonia understood. Later, he probably realized that he was no match for the great emperor, so he established the Holy Kingdom in Sotofia to strengthen his faith and gain more power. At that time, my father was suppressing the Demon Lord, trying to keep Iradia from being eroded by the abyss. However, Notorious took the opportunity to launch a sneak attack on my father. That guy carries the name of kindness and justice, but he did not do anything kind and righteous. Odin slowly pulled out the Spear of Eternity and stroked the curved handle of the spear. "I'm going to kill him." "Is that what you want to do?" "I'm not sure, but becoming the Emperor of the Black Wings Empire is a little too heavy for me." Odin said, "In the years when I replaced my father, I felt like I was bound to an iron chair. I could no longer do what I wanted to do. I carried the fate of countless people on my back. All my will and all my decisions were for the sake of this country. I couldn't have emotions and I couldn't make mistakes. If I made a mistake, I might implicate the entire Black Wings Empire. This is not what a black dragon should think. We are evil dragons, living for ourselves and the people we love." Bulonia shook his head. "The life and death of others has nothing to do with us. It's probably my mother's inheritance that made me not so pure." Odin smiled. She liked herself like this. My father should have seen this as well. That's why he spent so much effort to cultivate Khan. I'm very grateful to my father for giving me the right to choose. For most people in the world, this is really a luxury. Notorious's divine kingdom is located in Sotofia, which is the remote hinterland of the empire on which the sun never sets. Behind it is a cliff and the sea. Bulonia changed the topic. In the war between the Black Wings Empire and the Rising Sun Empire, the more defeated the empire is, the more people will flock to Sotofia and make Notorious stronger. This is a tricky problem. How can you kill the god of flames? I'm very sensitive to divine power. It's not difficult to find Notorious. Odin took off the hairpins from her head one after another. Her long hair flowed down like a waterfall. She began to change her clothes in front of Bulonia. She was already a big girl. Her body was slender and exquisite. Her eyebrows were moving, her lips were rosy, and her skin was as white as snow. She was as delicate as an elf and contained the valiance of a dragon. She had a soul-stirring beauty. I'm asking you how to kill him. Bulonia turned his face away to avoid jealousy. You don't know. I've become stronger during this period of time. Odin changed into a tailor-made armor and was fully armed. She reached out and pointed at Bulonia's forehead. My father is here. She pressed her hand down and came to Bulonia's chin. I'm probably here. Where's Notorious? Odin thought for a moment and moved her hand to the tip of Bulonia's nose. Around here. Bulonia curled his lips. Then I still can't beat him. It seems so. Odin smiled and stroked Bulonia's head. But the blood flowing in my body is different from yours. Although it will hurt you to say this, in this world, Only I have the same blood as my father. I am the daughter of the Black Emperor. I was born to defeat enemies stronger than myself. Leave now?" Bulonia watched as she held the spear of eternity. "Father is very busy. He doesn't have time to deal with the god who once assassinated him, but the Tangerine family will not forget this matter. Notorious is known as the god who walks on land, and I am also the god of Iradia. This is a battle between gods. I won't let him escape a second time." Odin's voice was as crisp as ever, but it was as if a dragon was roaring silently. The dark purple light spread in the space and finally engulfed her. It wasn't until she disappeared that Bulonia opened his mouth and said softly, "From now on, people will no longer call you the daughter of the Black Emperor or the Princess of the Black Wings. Instead, it will be the Lord of Twilight, Odin, the dragon god Odin." Chapter 653. When the dragons flapped their wings and left the city, the first ray of dawn had just crossed the horizon. The faint light poured down through the clouds, making the city that had just been attacked look especially desolate. Bara City was burning fiercely. A huge column of smoke rose from the city, and ashes fell like rain. The streets turned into canyons filled with broken walls and broken flesh. Collapsed houses covered every inch of the land, and the empty windows looked like the desperate eyes of the dead. After a long time, the city gradually began to hear the sounds of people. Wails and cries seeped out from the tortured city, like dripping blood, announcing the end of the Black Wings' attack on the city of Skogul. In the first few years of the war, such attacks were not common. But as time went by, the cruel prince became more and more impatient, and the attacks became more and more frequent. The attacks on the main city of Plato became continuous ravages. The magic barrier was repeatedly destroyed and rebuilt, and the degree of destruction of the city increased every day. To the people of the empire where the sun never sets, the war had always been illusory and distant. However, who would have thought that in just a few years, the wrath of the dragons was right in front of their eyes? Now, people had to fight desperately for survival. This human empire that had existed for 2,000 years was now under siege from both the north and the south. In the north, Dark Emperor had personally destroyed Fort Monkville. The Blackwing army, which was in a standoff with the Dawn Legion, immediately headed south and surged into the Lone Province. And in the south, Prince Poisonfire had already firmly grasped Skottel in his hands. The mountainous fleet sailed into the harbor of the empire on which the sun never sets, bearing down on Bara City. This kind of oppression was indescribable with words. Garin narrowed his eyes and sat on a high place. The fine vision of a dragon allowed him to see the black smoke rising from the city far away. He ate the large candies that the empire sent over, one by one. His mouth made a crunching sound as he chewed and swallowed them into his stomach. The dragonkin attendants suddenly turned their heads and looked at the horizon vigilantly. The lead-colored clouds rolled in snow from the west, covering the sky and the earth. The winter here was much colder than the north. Once it snowed, there would be no end to it. The accumulated snow would freeze the sea, and even the harbor would be flooded. Didn't the Storm Lord say that the weather would be good during this period? He stood up and shook his body as he prepared to leave. At this moment, an unbelievable figure suddenly appeared in the sky. It was flying in the storm and was approaching them at a speed faster than the tornadoes in the sky. No, no, no. Garin could only see it clearly when it got closer. It was not moving forward in the storm at all. It was the source of the storm. The raging tornadoes rolled along with its will, and its wings carried the leaden clouds in the sky. The Black Emperor. Accompanied by a rumble, the Emperor landed in front of the Poison Fire Prince. He wagged his tail, dispersing the snowstorm and thick clouds behind him. His 200-meter-tall body was like a towering mountain rising from the ground. He glanced down and found that the fellows below were as small as insects. Only then did he shrink to the size of the Poison Fire Prince. "Long time no see, my brother," Caesar greeted him casually. Garin bent his forelimbs and knelt in salute. "Greetings, my great brother, your majesty Orderonso. No need for pleasantries. Find a place to sit for a while, I have something to talk to you about," the black dragon said simply, glancing at the large pot of candies beside Garin's claws. "Get something to eat." The dragonkin attendants immediately went to make preparations. Gazing at the black dragon's metallic scales, Garin asked, "I can't sense how powerful you are now. Do you still need to eat in your current state?" "Physiologically speaking, I don't need to." Caesar shook his head. "But if the joy of eating also disappeared, it would be very boring, right?" "I don't quite understand." They settled down in a spacious cave. The servants quickly brought up the food. Most of it was supplies from the Empire. There were not many local ingredients, and the Southerners rarely raised large livestock like the Bismarck cattle or the ferocious bristled boar. "I heard you just woke up," Garin said. When he realized that Caesar did not mind, he stuffed another handful of jelly beans into his mouth. This thing was very popular among the dragon species. It was perfect for grinding teeth, and it was a good food to eat when one was bored. "A few days ago, I came to Monkville and fought with the gods. I killed one of them," the black dragon said casually. "The empire where the sun never sets has already lost. They might make a final counterattack before they die. I'm not worried about Odin, so I came here to take a look." Garin nodded. He had always been like this because he did not talk much. When he was young, he was even called stupid by Blakesia. After a while, he said gloomily, "I'm afraid it's not that simple." "What?" The black dragon scratched his chin. "When you came, you should have seen a city with black smoke rising. That city is called Bala. It's the center of the southern province of the Empire where the sun never sets. I've attacked it 14 times, but until today, the humans inside still haven't surrendered." Garin said softly, "I think they're determined to fight to the death. There are also many stubborn fellows among the humans." Caesar put his neck flat on the ground. "Just like when I conquered the northern countries, many heroes emerged. It's not the same." Garin shook his head. "In the eyes of this country, every one of us is a vicious, cruel, and violent predator. The people here are certain that the Black Emperor, or you, will not forgive any of the humans who were born in the Empire where the sun never sets. They want to kill them all. I promised the Platinum Dragon God that I would only eliminate the rebels," Caesar said. "But now every one of them is a rebel," Garin said. He took out some papers from his portable space and handed them to Caesar. "This is a declaration of war. It's widely circulated in the human empire. It's said that it was written by the Black Dragon Queen." The Black Dragon took it and looked at it. "Slaughter everything." This was the first sentence of the declaration. "Loyal soldiers, dependents, and servants of the evil dragon kingdom, crush everyone who stands in our way. Destroy all humans completely. Drag them out of the houses, straw huts, and holes in the ground. Everything you seize will be your spoils of war. Every head will be rewarded by the Black Emperor." This is not a declaration of Black Wing. It's more like something Aslier's Legion of Demons would say. Caesar said softly, "The ruler wants to force everyone to go to the battlefield." "I think so too. So I let the shape-shifting monsters spread the news among the humans and spread our ideas. I even released the captives in front of the city of Bara. But it still didn't work. The humans seem to be certain that everything we say and do is fake. Slaughter is the ultimate goal. In the eyes of the humans, we are the evil that started the war. It's normal that they don't trust us." Caesar stood up. His eyes were cold and his pupils were extremely bright. He was surrounded by golden cracks. "But the situation is too abnormal. This matter should be manipulated by the gods. You're an enemy of the gods. They can't defeat you here and lose the ability to fight for Eladia's faith. Since that's the case, we might as well destroy everything and let the humans die than let you succeed," said Garin. The black dragon laughed coldly. I haven't conquered the rising sun city yet. Even if I have unified Iradia, it will still take a few years to promulgate the ban and rectify the law. During this time, the gods can still draw faith from the people's thoughts. Garen shook his head. I heard that the gods' believers are all over the astral world. No matter how many intelligent creatures there are in Iradia, it's just one of the pastures. It's not that we can't abandon it. This world has been destroyed once, and it was the hands of the gods. The black dragon didn't speak. He walked out of the cave and looked into the distance. After a long time, he said, the astral world has changed for hundreds of millions of years. I know that the gods now are no longer the original gods. But after all, they are gods with good divine titles. I refuse to believe that they have reached this point. What's the difference between a good god and an evil god? Garen followed behind him. They have no feelings for Iradia. If they can't draw faith, they won't even look at the world being destroyed. Ordoranzo, I'm afraid it's not your wish to rule the world after killing the humans. What are you going to do? Chapter 654. Garen, you are known for your wisdom and strategy among the lords of the imperial court. Caesar asked, what do you think I should do? If you want to reduce the bloodshed, you must plan this carefully. We can first control the shape-shifting monsters to build several puppet kingdoms, instill Black Wing's thoughts and ideals, and then cut the rising sun city into several pieces or even dozens of pieces, slowly swallowing them. I didn't do this before, and I won't do it now. If Caesar Tangerine wants to conquer Iradia, he won't use this method. Black Dragon shook his head. Besides, we don't have time now. Asliers has repeatedly reminded me that the invasion of the Abyss is imminent. Then we can only use an iron-blooded method to let Black Wing's army destroy all obstacles. We can use the cruelest means to intimidate humans and completely destroy their will, just like what is said in this declaration of war. Prince Poisonfire's voice was cold. I request Nero to go out and transfer the Hound Demon clan to the front line. You underestimate humans too much, Garen. Caesar's gaze became distant. If we use this method, they will really fight us to the end. In the moment of life and death, the will of humans will be much more tenacious than you think. I know that they are a great race, Garen said in a low voice. In the face of unparalleled power and bloody facts, even the most devout belief will disappear, and even the most tenacious will collapse. Yes, rivers of blood and mountains of bones will always make some people terrified. Caesar agreed, but on that day, the capable, intelligent, and courageous humans will have died in the hands of Black Wing. It will be useless for me to rule the rising sun city in that situation. Prince Poisonfire was silent for a while, watching the subtle expressions on Black Dragon's face. After a while, he said, in fact, there is the best way, but I'm afraid you can't accept it. Let's hear it. Ask Bahamut for an oracle, and ask him to vouch for Black Wing. The good name of the Platinum Dragon God is spread far and wide in the astral world. Even the evil dragons respect him from the bottom of their hearts. His every word is full of weight. Even if it can't shake the zealots of the gods, it can still change the views of ordinary people on Black Wing. Good idea. Black Dragon clapped his hands. That's what you should say. Why didn't you mention it before? Ordoranzo, you have swept through everything with the strength of a mountain all your life. You despise and are hostile to the gods to the greatest extent. I thought you would not be willing to bow to Bahamut. It's not that. Caesar wagged his tail. I don't hate dragons. The name Demon Lords' name. Asliers Quintuta. Demon Lords. Names. Demon Lords. The names. And the names. Demon Lords. The names. I didn't expect you to be willing to let Bahamut speak. Garen said, those southerners must really hate you, that's why they believe in the gods' propaganda so deeply. In their eyes, I am the evil that instigates war. I am the disaster that destroys everything. It's natural for them to hate me. But you made the barren north prosper. You took the risk to suppress the crazy Monet. You killed the Abyss Monarch. Even today, Black Wing's troops are searching for the Abyss Gate day and night. They don't know about any of these things. They see us as man-eating demonic beasts. Dragons like us shouldn't complain. Hearing Garen's voice that was filled with reluctance, the black dragon reached out his claws to hug his neck. The things you said, I did it because I wanted to do it, not because of other people's opinions. Moreover, humans can't be blamed for this. Most people are blinded by rulers and gods. The god of hypocrisy deserves to die, Garen muttered. Indeed. Caesar smiled. His claws were sharp and his gaze was warm. He patted Garen's head, just like when they were young. Ortoranzo, are you now the most powerful creature in Iradia? You can say that. Then what do you want to do now? Unify Iradia. Do you know why I want to ask the Platinum Dragon God for help? Because in my eyes, humans are already a part of my clan. I don't want to slaughter my clan again at the last moment of the plane's unification. Caesar released his claws and released Garen's head. A clan that resists is not a good clan, Poison Fire Prince said. Reduce the bloodshed. Consider it a little favor I have for humans. Caesar said, remember Enrique's threat of otherworldlings theory? They said that different races have different thoughts. It sounds reasonable, but it's wrong in the context of the astral plane. We are all Iradia's children. Do you want this land to be destroyed? Garen quickly shook his head. If Iradia is destroyed, Blakesia and Bulonia will have no place. Yes, there are things we need to protect in this land. That's true for you and me, and for every intelligent and non-intelligent life. Caesar said softly, I want to unify Eladia. I want to create a brand new country. This country will not only be a country of dragons, but also a community of millions of races on this land. I want everyone to take up arms and fight against the invasion of the Abyss. I want everyone to fight against the gods. This is what I want to do. Garen heard this and let out a long sigh. He lowered his head and said respectfully, Ortoranzo, Emperor of Races, King of Kings, I am far inferior to you. The black dragon suddenly turned around and stepped on the rocks. As you said, I will make a deal with Bahamut and have him send down an oracle to Iradia to restore the humans' trust in the Black Wing. Send my orders to all the clans in Skjal. Only eliminate those who resist, accept captives, and treat civilians well. As you command. Garen bent his knees and left immediately. For Iradia. The black dragon spread his wings and his body expanded in the wind. He returned to his 200-meter-tall form and swept past the Skjal coast with a storm. He entered the vast sea of stars, and wherever he passed, the waves and tsunamis reached up to 100 meters. Good Dragon God, Master of the North Wind, Platinum Dragon Majesty Bahamut, I, Caesar Ortoranzo Tangerine, call upon your name and await your appearance. The black dragon narrowed his eyes and muttered in a low voice. Although the gods could hear every sentence that contained their names, if the praying person was not a fanatic or a god's chosen one, the gods would generally not respond. And such a simple call without malice would be directly ignored by the gods. However, Caesar was very confident. When a creature like him called out the name of a god, it would have some kind of power that would easily attract the attention of the gods. In the past, whenever they talked about the gods, Caesar would block the space, but this time, he removed the radiation interference. Soon, a figure slowly condensed and appeared in front of Caesar with a warm and mellow divine light. Chapter 655. The sudden appearance of the divine light calmed the roar of the sea, turning the violent storm into a gentle breeze. The divine light was not blinding, but warm and gentle. Bahamut's projection descended. As the good dragon god, His appearance was of course a majestic and strong metal dragon. His platinum scales shone beautifully under the sunlight. It was said that Bahamut had a gigantic dragon body that was thousands of meters long, but at this moment, he only showed the same size as Caesar. If I remember correctly, this is the first time you've called my name, Caesar Tangerine. The platinum dragon smiled at the black dragon. I'm very happy that you can break free from the shackles of Tiamat. Thank you for your kindness to me, King Bahamut, Caesar said. I know that you're different from those gods. He did not rush to make his request, but first expressed his gratitude to the platinum dragon god. Not long after, the platinum dragon god and the human god system descended together. Not only did they not attack him, but they also gave him some subtle reminders, hoping that Caesar would avoid fighting. He still remembered this. That matter, if you're willing to leave some leeway, there may be a possibility of reconciliation. Bahamut sighed. Most gods live by faith. If you want to cut off the faith of Iradia, it's tantamount to stripping them of their lives. It's reasonable that they want to punish you. They can do whatever they want to me. I don't care. But you care about the native creatures of Iradia. The first time you called my name, it was to solve this matter, wasn't it? Yes. Caesar nodded without hesitation. I didn't expect that the gods only wanted faith and did not care about the lives of mortals. They instigated the humans to fight to the death with Black Wing until the last drop of blood. It didn't matter if all of them died in battle, it didn't matter if the race went extinct. This is not what a good god should do. Bahamut shook his head. What do you want me to do? An oracle that will resound throughout Iradia. Caesar said, Your Majesty Bahamut, your good name is known throughout the world. I hope that you can speak up for Blackwing, expose the lies of the Sun Lord, and show the humans the true situation within the Blackwing Empire. Letting humans see the truth is not against my principles. I can help you. Platinum Dragon's blue eyes shone brightly. At the same time, Caesar Tangerine, I need your help with something too. A transaction is equivalent, I understand. Black Dragon replied in understanding. As long as you can issue an oracle to make the Iradia people recognize reality, I will also help you with one thing. Don't misunderstand, this is not a deal. Bahamut explained, whether you reject my request or not, I will still send an oracle after the projection. These are two different things. Caesar, you have to understand. I know, please say it. The metal dragons withdrew from Iradia because I had no intention of letting the children participate in the battle between Blackwing and the Rising Sun City. Now that the war is about to end and the invasion of the demons is imminent, I hope that after you unify the continent, you can draw out a suitable habitat for the metal dragons to return. Many children who grew up in Iradia have strong feelings for their homeland. They are willing to return here and fight against the abyss. I will do it, Caesar smiled. If they don't hate my evil. It's not evil, it's selfish. Bahamut looked at him deeply. You're a very insecure child. Caesar did not mind that the Black Emperor of Iradia was called a child. He just joked, obviously, they are both righteous and kind gods. How can the gap between the Sun Lord and the Platinum Dragon god be so big? Pyro, the Platinum Dragon, was silent for a while, as if some memories had been awakened. The Sun Lord was not like this originally. He used to be a model of justice, the embodiment of kindness, and created many beautiful things. But in the process of touring the astral plane, he was horribly murdered by the evil god Talos. From then on, Pyro was determined to become a warrior god. He would use his blazing flames to burn away the darkness and use pain to intimidate the evil. He began to pursue faith and power, and in every battle, he would take the lead and eliminate millions of demons, devils, abominations, and other evil races. If a good god has too much blood on his hands, he will become violent, paranoid, and indifferent. Pyro, Mistra, and Corlan are all like this. Among them, The Lord of War's corruption is especially obvious. In my eyes, he can no longer be considered a god of the righteous camp. What about you? Why aren't you affected? Caesar was curious. The platinum dragon, who was shrouded in the light, was not without blood. His eyes were filled with kindness, but they were not without flames. These flames had once engulfed a terrible war, and also burned down the conspiracy of the 7 evil gods led by greed and wrath, causing a powerful evil force in the astral world to be annihilated at the edge of the Source Sea. The name of that war was now known as Bahamut's Breath. Bahamut's platinum-colored dragon wings flapped in a fierce gale as he stood at the edge of the primal chaos, killing every enemy that tried to approach the origin sea. His roar resounded through the hellish battlefield, and no one was his match. I also fell. When Tiamat murdered Astrina, I did not stop her because I was eager to absorb Tamara's power. Bahamut closed his eyes and changed his tone slightly. Astrina and Tamara were also dragon gods. The father of all dragons, Io, did not only favor Bahamut and Tiamat. He left behind a total of 9 children, but most of them were murdered by Tiamat, and some were lost in the river of time. Only the platinum dragon and the 5-faced dragon remained active in the astral plane. Caesar had no intention of delving into that part of history. He could only stay silent and wait for the rest. As for why I did not become like Pyro and Corlon, it is probably because I did not pursue faith. You see, if you judge me by the strength of my divine power, I am only a lesser god. Bahamut slowly opened his eyes and looked at the endless sea. The power of gods comes from their faith and divinity. Faith and divinity can be seized and fought for. It is a terrible thing. Caesar agreed. Descend will end here. Not only will I help you issue an oracle, but I will also help you resist the pressure of the gods so that they will not interfere with Iradia, Bahamut said in a low voice. Bahamut said in a low voice, the demons desperately want to ascend to the material world. They are like people on the verge of death, grabbing onto a rope to save their lives. With the current situation of the Eladian race, there is no way to resist the abyss. Mortals can't do it, nor can metal dragons. Only you can. If even you fail, this world can only walk down the path of destruction. Thank you. Black Dragon looked at the platinum dragon's figure that was gradually disappearing and nodded seriously. Chapter 656. Not long after dawn, Old Way added a handful of charcoal to the brazier. He first prayed to the gods, then cursed the damned weather, and sat on the threshold in a daze. The heat from the brazier was only enough to warm the surroundings. Moist snowflakes rustled down. Not far away, the stable was already covered with a layer of snow. From time to time, it would make cracking sounds as if it was about to collapse. This rundown tavern named Silver Moon was located on a nameless road that branched off from the King's Road. It was lonely and 7 miles away from the nearest town. Logically speaking, such a remote place was deserted. It would be difficult to even support oneself by opening a tavern here. However, Old Way was quick-witted and came up with a way to make money. Gambling. The empire on which the sun never sets prohibited gambling. The soldiers often caught gamblers in the town, but gambling was not something that could be quitted easily. Old Way was also a gambler when he was young. He was caught more than once and suffered a lot of beatings. Later, he hardened his heart and gave up gambling. However, what he did was still related to gambling. He ran out of Canteno City and opened a gambling den in a remote and secluded place in the countryside. Old Way did not have much influence. He did not dare to take a large sum of money like the underground gambling dens in the city. He only took a little bit of money from the winners. The soldiers thought that the place was too far and remote. Moreover, it was a small gambling den, so they were too lazy to investigate. After a few years, the Silver Moon Tavern slowly gained some fame among the gamblers in Canteno. Seeing that the money was saved up bit by bit, Old Way carefully planned and prepared to confess to the widowed Madame Heron. However, the situation in the empire on which the sun never sets suddenly took a turn for the worse. For several months, refugees from all over the world crowded the King's Road. They used carriages, carts, and shoulders to carry their belongings. Some even drove their livestock. They were thin and lifeless as they moved forward. They looked like corpses among the undead. Wherever they passed, they left behind nightmarish experiences. Man-eating monsters occupy Scottsdale. The evil dragon's army destroys Hajian Kingdom. The Dawn Army retreats. The Black Dragon Emperor slaughters Monkville. Old Way panicked, not only because of the rumors and the refugees along the way, but also because during the last gambling gathering, he heard several gamblers talking about how the powerful nobles and officials were secretly sending their families to King's City. This was the news that really deserved attention. Old Way realized that it was difficult for civilians like them to understand the real situation. Only the movements of the nobles could explain the situation. He wanted to go to Canteno to inquire about the situation, but the snow that had been falling for more than 10 days had blocked the road. In some places, the snow was a meter deep. Even the strongest horses and mules could not move. God knows how many refugees had frozen to death in this terrible weather. Since that gambling gathering, the Silver Moon Tavern had not welcomed any new guests. Old Way had also lost the means to obtain information. He could only stay on the threshold and pray anxiously to himself. Let's see how much food is left. Old Way carried the brazier and was ready to go back to his room. At this time, he suddenly heard a strange sound above his head. It didn't sound like snow, but more like the gurgling of boiling water. He opened his eyes wide and looked up, only to see a scene that he had never seen even in his dreams. I am the Platinum Dragon God Bahamut. Today's battle begins. Your performance must be better than yesterday's. After the order was given, an awe-inspiring aura broke out. The warriors in the duel bowed and looked at each other. Heavy breaths came out from their horned helmet. Although they were not as tall as the adult orcs, they were still wearing heavy armor. Their brown bodies were protected by layers of heavy armor, and their fierce eyes were fixed on their opponents. The warrior holding the dagger leaned slightly to one side, his fingers clenching the hilt. He exerted force and made a diagonal slash tentatively. His dagger was more than 2 meters long, like a spear. There were no fancy engravings on it. The pure black blade glowed with a metallic light. The shape of the dagger was also very strange. The hilt was short and the blade was long. It was more suitable for slashing than stabbing. Using such a dagger required great strength. This was not a dagger that could be used by humans. It was the standard black dagger of the Blackwing Empire's orc army. The opponent holding the short axe also knew the power of the weapon. He maintained extreme caution, slowly changing his position. He did not overreact to his opponent's actions. He moved forward step by step, trying to get closer before attacking. At this moment, the expression of the orc holding the short axe changed. A rock protruded from the snow and blocked his feet. He could not help but change his center of gravity. Just as he was about to adjust himself, a roar came toward him. The orc holding the dagger jumped high, ignoring the weight of his armor. His movements were vigorous and fierce, like a ferocious beast pouncing down the mountain. This was the standard jumping slash of the orc's battle technique. It was easy to master. It was neither profound nor profound, and there were no changes in the momentum. It was just a normal jump, raising the dagger and slashing. But it was a fatal slash. The air was torn apart by the blade, and there was an ear-piercing screech. The orc holding the short axe wanted to block it, but he realized that it would be difficult to block such a powerful attack. The best way to deal with it now was to roll. Although his posture would be very awkward, he could effectively avoid it. But the orc did not want to retreat. The warrior with the axe let out a deep roar, as if a giant beast had just awoken. The blood of his ancestors was boiling in his body. He actually leaped into the air and raised his axe up high. He was using the exact same battle technique as his opponent. He was actually trying to determine the winner with a single strike. The orc holding the dagger roared, activating his bloodline. The two sides crossed in the air. Clang! Their weapons let out a sharp trembling sound. They fell to the ground at the same time, then immediately turned around and stood up. They faced each other again while panting, staring at each other's bodies vigilantly. "All right." The old orc watching from the side waved his hand. "You have a similar level of control of the ancestral blood, but today's contest is won by Tamu. Although he was disturbed, he was still evenly matched with you. Tazen, you seized the opportunity to attack first. You should not have lost. If my blade was sharp, I could cut him in the air. But my brother's strength is not as good as mine." The two warriors took off their helmet. One curled his lips and the other chuckled. They were actually two children. Their faces were very young, and they looked far from being underage. "Today's contest ends here. Go back and change your clothes and get ready for class," the old orc said lightly. When they heard that they were going to class, Tazen and Tamu were immediately discouraged. They frowned and looked reluctant. "Class again. This is the order of the great emperor, and it is also for your own good. In 2 years you will be 16 years old. If you can't pass the test, you won't be able to get the title of warrior, no matter how strong you are." The old orc sternly taught and reminded them, "When you pass by the statue in the garden, remember to salute the great emperor and the lords of the palace." "Got it." The older brother, Tazen, nodded. "Grandpa, I have a question." The younger brother, Tamu, came up and asked curiously, "Who is that orc with few strands of hair in the garden? He can actually stand next to the great emperor's statue. The Lord of Gaul is behind him." "That person." The old orc was startled and gently exhaled. "That person is called Save." As his voice fell, the light above his head suddenly became distorted. A shining and majestic projection appeared, filling the sky of the orc city of Victory. "I am the platinum dragon god, Bahamut." Blakija woke up from the treasury that was filled with gold and silver. As soon as she opened her vertical eyes, her expression suddenly changed and she screamed sharply, "Where are my treasures? Whoever stole my crown, I will eat him alive." Damn it, that was a crown that was filled with 66 gems. When the servants heard the voice, they hurriedly ran in and knelt in front of the female black dragon that was covered in the smell of gold and silver. They said in a trembling voice, "Your Highness Blakija, your crown of gems was swallowed into your stomach. How is that possible?" Blakija stood up furiously and shook off the gold and treasures on her scales. She roared in the midst of the clanking sound, "You dare to fool me? You must have stolen my treasures. Do you know who I am? I am the sister of the Black Emperor, the wife of the Poison Fire Prince. I will hang you all." The servants trembled in fear and did not dare to make a sound. Recently, Her Highness Blakija would fly into a rage every time she woke up. They were mentally prepared. After a while, the female black dragon woke up from her rage and began to recall. That crown of gems! It seemed that she had indeed eaten it. She had played with it for a long time yesterday and liked it very much. In the end, she could not help but swallow it into her stomach to digest it. After recognizing the reality, the female black dragon raised her head and snorted, "Get out of here, or I will kill you all." Although this scene happened almost every day, the servants still breathed a sigh of relief and left the treasury one by one. As long as they could pass the test of Blakija's rage every time she woke up, the rest of the work would be very easy. Compared to ordering the servants around, the female black dragon was more willing to do everything herself. They only needed to clean the nest and clean up the dust. Snow. After telling the servants to leave, Blakija slowly climbed out of the palace and squinted at the falling snow. Her voice was hoarse. "It rarely snows in Vilost. That fellow Garen should come and take a look." Because of the distance, she and Garen could only rely on long-distance magic to communicate. In the short communication, Garen never told Blakija about the progress of the war. He only told Blakija about the latest news in the Empire where the sun never set. However, this war had been going on for decades. No matter how slow Blakija was, she knew how difficult it was. If you tell Caesar that you want to rest, won't that fellow let you come back? What an idiot, Blakija complained. She and Garen had been together ever since they were born, and they had rarely been separated. Although she always despised this silly brother of hers, she still felt unaccustomed to Garen's departure. And this discomfort increased with time. Even Blakija herself noticed that her temper seemed to be getting worse. The female black dragon paced back and forth outside the palace with a gloomy expression, leaving huge footprints. She then used her tail to sweep the footprints away to pass the long and boring time. In the next second, Blakija's expression suddenly changed. The muscles under her scales suddenly tensed up. She looked around vigilantly as she smelled something unusual. Soon, she noticed the source of the abnormality. She looked up at the sky and muttered in an incredulous tone, "Bahamut, Your Majesty. I am the Platinum Dragon God Bahamut, the Lord of the North, the King of the Good Dragons. The world of Iradia is in a bloody and cruel war. I have come to quell the war, the Elf Kingdom, the Kingdom of Wolfheart, the Middle Lands, Hudgien, Fortress Monkville." Living beings everywhere looked up and could see the majestic Platinum Dragon. From Scottsdale on the southern shore of the Empire where the sun never sets, to the uninhabited land at the northernmost tip of the Blackwing Empire, and even to Vilost on the other side of the continent, Bahamut's deep and majestic voice could be heard everywhere. It was winter 1782 of the Third Era. It was snowing all over Iradia. Chapter 657. The Platinum Dragon talked about the current situation of the Black Wing Empire with a deep and majestic voice. His words were appropriate and orderly, and every syllable was very rhythmic. There were no emotional elements in the whole speech, and it did not provide the slightest guidance for the audience. It only described objectively and sincerely to help people understand the fact. This was Bahamut's oracle. Even the crippled living beings could hear the rumbling echoing in their mind. What a spectacular sight! The Black Dragon was entrenched on an uninhabited island in the Sea of Stars. He raised his eyes and looked at the Platinum Dragon that spanned the north and south. The whole continent was dyed with a layer of pale blue because of his projection. Giving an oracle through the boundary wall not only consumed divine power, but also damaged one's will and spirit. Even with Pyro's hatred for the Black Dragon, he did not give an oracle when the empire on which the sun never set was in danger. He only used churches and temples to bewitch the people and incite the southerners to resist to the end. Bahamut did so without asking for anything in return. In addition, the Platinum Dragon God also had to bear the pressure from the human god. "I will remember your help, Your Majesty Bahamut," Caesar said in his heart. Then he withdrew his gaze, and his pupils became calm again. He stood up under the majestic projection of Bahamut and flapped his wings to leave the Sea of Stars. Now was not the time to examine the oracle of the Platinum Dragon God. He had other things to do. The Black Dragon swept across the vast sea with a majestic momentum and entered the barren desert in the northwest. This was an ownerless land, with no roads and no people. As far as the eye could see, only irregular stones could be seen along the way. Even the blue dragon who loved sand would not choose to build its nest here. Caesar went deep into this land, and sand and stones flew everywhere he passed, setting off strong tornadoes. In the depths of the desolate and scorching Gobi Desert, a dark red gate of the abyss stood majestically, exuding an aura that made people flinch. The foul smell of the demons almost overflowed from the other side of the gate. This was where Asliers intercepted the demon lords, but now they were gone. There were traces of battle everywhere near the gate. The energy that had not yet dissipated rampaged, causing the poisonous snakes and ants lurking under the sand to be destroyed. Pits of various sizes extended to the end of the ground, and some were even emitting wisps of black smoke. The black dragon's claws sank deep into the sand. He paced and looked around. He did not smell the breath of extraordinary creatures within the range of his perception. Although the gate of the abyss stood tall, no demons stepped out from the other side of the gate. Asliers is dead? This thought popped up in Caesar's mind, but was immediately denied. The lord of the infernal prison was not weak. He had adapted to the environment of Iradia and could freely use his power in this land. Later, he digested Kuntuta's virtual divinity and became even more powerful. Even Caesar would have a hard time dealing with the completely elemental Asliles. He would have to put in a lot of effort. No matter how strong the demon lords in the abyss were, they would not be able to kill the infernal king in a short period of time. This gate of the abyss had the smell of Asliers. The black dragon noticed. Was that guy trying to help the Dark Cloud King open a portal? To other demon lords, this suspicion was reasonable, and they would indeed do so. However, Asliers was different. The lord of the infernal prison had reminded the black dragon to be aware of the threat of the abyss several times. He had even taken the initiative to kill the king of gluttony who had landed in the material world. Obviously, he was already on the opposite side of the abyss. Even if he changed his mind temporarily, he would have a better time to open the gate. There was no need to take the risk while the black dragon was awake. The black dragon narrowed his eyes and approached the towering gate of the abyss step by step. He felt the surging power and the mutated aura within, thinking about whether he should go in and explore. Once he crossed the portal, the demons of the abyss would definitely welcome him warmly. The black dragon was not so conceited that he could fight against 1,000,000 demons alone. How to return was also a problem. Although the black dragon's emperor's decree could tear space apart, it was still unknown whether it could allow him to cross countless worlds and teleport back from the abyss. It was not wise to recklessly step into such a dangerous and unknown place. Just as the black dragon was thinking, a white skull covered in flames emerged from the scarlet energy, followed by an arm and an elementalized lower body. The infernal king stepped through the gate of the abyss, bringing with him violent flames and peerless power, returning to the land of Iradia. You really know how to pick a time. Seeing the black dragon waiting behind the gate, Asliers was not surprised. He snorted and said, "When I was fighting Ninos, you were nowhere to be seen. After the battle, you appeared. I was entangled with the gods for a while." The black dragon casually explained and asked, "Ninos?" The Gemini demon, the lord of the 763rd floor of the abyss, my old friend, a very difficult character to deal with. You killed it. No, that guy realized that he was not my opponent and immediately chose to escape. I originally planned to enter the abyss to kill it, but I encountered a lot of obstacles. I was afraid that after a long time, I would attract the attention of the pillar god, so I gave up. Asliers said casually. The black dragon nodded. There were some situations that the lord of the infernal prison did not mention. After entering the abyss, the biggest obstacle he encountered was actually the will of the abyss. Ninos said that he lost the demon's heart, which was not empty words. The lord of the infernal prison, who was accepted by the world of Iradia, was rejected by the abyss. In that environment, he was not the Gemini demon's opponent. Even if the current Asliers could still pull up the portal and travel between the two worlds at will, as time passed, it was unknown whether he could still maintain the identity of a demon. If he wanted to continue to become stronger, he had to transform himself from the Lord of the Abyss into something else. What should he transform into? Asliers used his bony fingers to fiddle with his chin. The black dragon's voice interrupted his thoughts. I came here to see you to tell you something. I'm going to find a place to sleep for a while. Sleep again? The lord of the infernal prison was shocked, then revealed a scrutinizing gaze, looking up and down at the black dragon, thinking about the change in status between them. The injury you suffered last time, was it that serious? You haven't recovered yet. That's not the reason. Caesar did not care about the other's malicious gaze. It's just a simple growth. It won't be long this time, maybe a few weeks, maybe a few days. After killing the god of retribution, he felt the call from the Black Dream. A new achievement was brewing in the Black Dream, waiting for the Black Dragon to pick it. Then why did you come to see me? Finding that the Black Dragon was not weakening as he expected, but instead becoming stronger, Asliers was a little annoyed. He had to complete the transformation as soon as possible, otherwise it would be difficult to trample this dragon under his feet. I just came to take a look. I'm afraid you're dead, Caesar said. Bastard. The annoyance turned into rage, and the desert became a raging sea of fire. The Lord of the Infernal Prison roared out, Are you humiliating me? Do you think I'm a weak reptile? That I'll be killed by other demons of the abyss? I'm going to pull off your scales one by one and turn you into a hairless vulture. Since the abyss gate is closed, then come back with me. The black dragon automatically filtered out the trash talk. Chapter 658. Wait, Asliers suddenly said. The flames surged with suspicion. His fiery eye sockets moved slightly, and his gaze seemed to pierce through Black Dragon. You have the smell of a god on you. It's the divinity of the god of retribution. Caesar didn't hide it and showed him what he had gained from the Battle of Monkwell. The complete divinity appeared in his eyes. It was a golden hexagonal cube without any shadows or dark patterns on its surface. It looked like an exquisite work of art, a work of art that couldn't be created even if one exhausted everything. This is the complete divinity. The Lord of the Infernal Prison sighed softly and then cursed in a low voice. How can there be such a stupid god that you actually killed him? A true god needs to consume a lot of divine power to break through the barrier of Iradia. After he came down, he didn't rest and immediately fought me under Pyro's instructions. It's normal for him to die in the material world, Caesar said. Asliers was even more confused. Pyro watched him die. Yes, except for this guy, the other gods are all projections. They were restricted by the various rules of Iradia and couldn't rescue him in time. Black Dragon nodded. Your reason doesn't make sense. The Lord of the Infernal Prison whispered, The gods have lived for so many years, and it's not that they haven't encountered powerful enemies. They've hunted down evil creatures and there have been successful cases. If the gods were so easy to kill, I'm afraid they wouldn't have been able to hold the power of the astral world. Quell Dorii thought he could fight against the gods back then, so he began to plan for war early on. He was fully prepared to welcome the arrival of the gods, but in the end, didn't he all die? He was massacred. Even the plane was torn apart and fragmented into what you call Iradia, Vilost, and some lands that drifted into the astral world. I know all that you said, Caesar said. You don't understand Pyro's viciousness. If the Sun Master God wanted to kill you, he wouldn't just send a weak god to the lower realm. If necessary, he would even descend himself. The Lord of the Infernal Prison continued, Such cowardice and cowardice, retreating weakly after suffering losses. It doesn't seem like the work of a Lord God. It seems more like something those useless devils would do. Don't tell me you want me to shift my hostile gaze to the devils? The black dragon wagged its tail. I do have such thoughts. The Lord of the Infernal Prison did not try to hide it. He only looked at the golden crystal and said, But there is indeed a problem with this matter. A complete divine spark is not so easy to obtain. The reason why only one god descended to the mortal realm. The black dragon turned to look at the dome. It's probably because someone helped him. Asliers immediately came to a realization. Are you talking about the red dragon, Kuengudios? I'm not sure if it's Dios or Bahamut, but if Bahamut was the one who stopped the gods, then he wouldn't have had to project himself with the gods and tell me what he did. Caesar fell silent for a moment before replying. As for Dios, he told me last time that I wasn't fighting alone. He said that he would provide me with some protection in the astral realm, but the prerequisite was that I couldn't be weak. I had to use my strength to demonstrate the might of the mutated dragons, unify Iradia, and guard the insect path. To be honest, I didn't take his words to heart. That guy is so careless, and I didn't think that he would actually be willing to help me fight against the gods. The black dragon's voice was as light as a feather. If Koen Gu Dios were to hear this, he would have most likely laughed heartily before patting the black dragon's shoulder and saying things like, "I'm a man of my word. That's how I, Dios, live in this world. Let's give it our all. I want to see the evil dragons dance in the Audio world." So Dios has indeed become your backer. However, you've offended so many sovereigns that even the Crimson Disaster won't be able to stop them. You've probably found other helpers. I'll ask the mutated dragons when I can talk to them, the black dragon said. After such a long time, his thirst for power had been reignited once again. It was imperative that he unify the Iradia world. Only then would he be able to rule over the Star Realm and the Abyss. "Hey, give me that quintessence," Aslier said bluntly, not treating them as strangers at all. "No. You don't need the Godhead, and there's no point in keeping it. Why don't you give it to me?" The Lord of the Infernal Prison said, "Black Dragon, I'm helping you guard the Abyssal Gate, so it's only right that you pay me. I can pay you, but I can't give you this Godhead." The Black Dragon shook his head again. "Why?" Aslier's was a little angry. "I don't need this thing, but the Godhead of a true God is just a source of energy in your hands. It's not like a virtual Godhead that can bring you true improvement. There's someone in this world who can make better use of it, my daughter," Caesar said, wrapping the golden diamond-shaped cube with psionic power and sending it to Odin's hands. "You can't even protect yourself now, yet you're still in the mood to think about others. You're an idiot who's led by the nose by your emotions, weak and humble." Aslier sneered, but he did not stop the Black Dragon's actions. He just asked, "Where's my reward? What do you want?" "Black Rock Mountain. I want to move the Black Rock Mountain away from the Black Wing Empire. The Northerners call the Black Rock Mountain a country within a country. You should also be very troubled. Take this opportunity to let the demons of the Black Rock Mountain become independent." Aslier said, "I'm going to build a new nest on the land under your feet. After pulling away, my Baylor demons will not interfere with your Blackwing clan. Their first target of destruction is the Rising Sun City. In addition, the threat from the demons will help you annex the land in the south. After all, compared with the demons, the Blackwing clan is as kind and lovely as an angel. Humans will quickly throw themselves into your arms and lick your toes." The Lord of the Infernal Prison looked like he was giving alms. "How about it? Are you satisfied with this proposal?" Caesar thought for a while and shook his head. "Bahamut helped me convey the revelation of the oracle. I also promised him that I would keep my promise. Let's change it again." "Hypocrite," Aslier sneered. He had already seen clearly that the so-called reward was just empty talk. The Black Dragon did not intend to pay anything at all, but he did not care. Iradia had already opened the door to him. As the great lord of the upper realm, he could seize anything he wanted by strength. This kind of weak material creature was not qualified to talk about a deal with him. "Then let's change it to the last one." In order to embarrass the Black Dragon, Aslier's deliberately blew a breath, hummed twice and said, "I want the position of the Lord of the Dark Cloud. Can you get it?" "I'll get it for you within 100 years. Chapter 659. It was said that the divine kingdom in Sotofia was a city flowing with light. It rose from the ground under the great power of the god of light and fire. It was peaceful, comfortable, and beautiful. It was always filled with warm sunlight, helping people to stay away from diseases and curses. Everyone could have a farm full of cows and sheep, fruits and vegetables. Even if they did not have to work hard, there was an endless supply of good wine waiting to be enjoyed. But it was also a place of dreams. Many people who came after hearing the news could not find the entrance to the city. Sotofia was only open to the believers of the God of light and fire. To find it, one had to be pious and even fanatical enough. All this was not a problem for Odin. She was a real god and was very sensitive to the flow of divine power. The illusion left by Notorious could not affect her. Odin easily found the hiding place of the god of light and fire and stabbed the spear into the warm air. The so-called divine kingdom on land was indeed in Sotofia, but it was not a real city, but a tree without roots. Notorious found a miniature half-bit wall and connected its space-time node to a certain place in Sotofia. He used it as his own kingdom to absorb believers and faith. The demiplane that was shrouded in darkness slowly revealed itself under the push of divine power. In just a few seconds, the protection of the miniature plane had already collapsed. The particles that made up the material flew everywhere with long, beautiful tails behind them. The brilliant light of elemental explosions and the disintegration of space could be seen everywhere. Waves of imperceptible seismic waves spread outward. This shaking was not even enough to shake the water in the cup, but it cycled back and forth. After more than a dozen continuous vibrations, the entire demiplane finally showed its full appearance, and the door opened. Odin stepped into Notorious' divine kingdom. She briefly explored for a while and found that this space was not as large and firm as Iradia. The rules of the plane were also very rough. Obviously, the god of light and fire did not really develop it. He only made some small modifications on the surface to make it look exquisite and beautiful. Odin flew along the low hills. There were continuous flower beds and orchards on both sides. The terrain was getting lower and lower. Finally, she saw a sparkling lake. The reflection of the lake showed a brilliant golden color, like flowing gold. On the shore of the lake was a settlement full of ancient style. The scale was between a town and a village. White stone pillars covered with vines were its border. In the center of the settlement stood a majestic palace. The layout was grand and elegant. When she withdrew her gaze, the army of zealots had already surrounded her. There were no living people in this place. The ordinary believers had either become zealots who could continuously provide faith, or were turned into servants of Notorious who gave everything to him. Odin swung the Spear of Eternity without mercy. The Spear of Eternity bloomed with blazing light and pierced toward the zealots with invincible power. The army in front of Odin remained calm and did not retreat a single step. They used their fragile armor to take the full brunt of the attack. 1/3 of the zealots fell, but only the dull sound of falling could be heard. There was no cry of pain. Whether it was the zealots or the servants of God, in a sense, they could no longer be regarded as intelligent life. Slaughtering them would not burden Odin mentally. She easily cleared these small obstacles and ascended to Notorious' palace. The towering dome covered a huge area, and the inside of the majestic palace was unusually empty. There were no obstructing furnishings or servants, and only a throne stood quietly at the end of the palace. Odin dragged his spear forward, and his high-heeled silver boots made clacking sounds as he stepped on the marble floor. Notorious sat on the golden throne and looked calmly at Odin approaching slowly. It was as if the person in front of him was not an intruder into his kingdom, but a friend who had come to visit. When Odin was only 30 meters away from him, Notorious suddenly sighed. When I heard that the son of the Black Dragon was also a god, I didn't want to believe it. I didn't expect it to be the case. Are these your last words? Notorious sighed. I have shown my concession and pulled back from the whirlpool of war. When the gods murdered the Black Dragon, I did not do anything. Why are you still unwilling to forgive me and insist on provoking blood and fire? My father fought the demon lord to the death in order to protect Eladia, but you ambushed him from behind. Odin shook her head. We will not forget this. At that time, I was still under Pyro's control and had to act according to the will of the Sun Sovereign, Notorious said coldly. You have a reason, but it doesn't mean you won't be punished. Odin said, You hurt my father, so I want to kill you. The god of light and flame could no longer maintain his calmness and indifference. He could not help but laugh out loud. The echoes of his laughter collided under the dome. Foolish and arrogant. You dare to challenge my throne with just a primordial divine artifact of Eladia? It would be more appropriate if your father were here. If my father came, you would tremble, right? Odin said softly. Impudent. Notorious suddenly stood up, flames surging behind him. He stretched out his hand and the golden throne twisted in the flames, turned into liquid and poured into the hands of the god of light and fire. It condensed into a brilliant spear again. He pointed forward. Die, evil god! The transformation was forcibly broken, and Odin revealed his true form as a dragon. His slender body of 20 meters was a good target. Notorious held the divine spear in his hand, and the magnificent divine light filled the palace. He stabbed at the imprisoned dragon fairy. With your weak divine power, you are not qualified to bear your fangs at me. What shocked Notorious was that the chains of order crisscrossed in the void and entangled the spear at an unimaginable speed. It was like a python entangling its prey until it was completely shattered. Don't you understand that the strength of divine power is not the standard to judge the dragon god? Her Majesty Tiamat is only a mid-level divine power, and His Majesty Bahamut is only a low-level divine power. Odin raised his head. His beautiful scales flashed with deep purple flowing light. He had entered his third form. But if you dare to face their true bodies, you will only be annihilated into dust by the unstoppable dragon breath. The purplish dragon lunged forward. Odin had already completely grasped the eternal spear. When he was in his dragon form, he had become one with it, allowing the indestructible and unstoppable characteristics of the eternal spear to spread to every corner of his body. Every movement of his was filled with unparalleled sharpness, easily piercing through the air and creating terrifying thunderous booms. A weak god is a weak god. The god of light and fire said coldly and moved quickly. Odin's sharp claws could only catch his residual shadow. Notorious could draw power from his divine kingdom at will. Endless divine spells could be released with just a thought. After another teleportation, he found an opportunity. Odin's scales were not as hard and thick as the Black Emperor's. The places where the divine spear slashed were cut like paper, leaving a terrible wound. The next moment the dragon retaliated. His sharp claws covered Notorious without any gap and crushed his body. The god of light and fire had to distance himself and use his divine power to restore his body. Maybe I'm a weak god, but I heard that you, a mid-level god, were destroyed with just a glance. You only managed to survive under the protection of the Sun King. Odin showed her rare harshness. Is it true? Notorious was furious. That scene was undoubtedly a disgrace to him. Odin's words had touched the dignity of a god. He drew power from his divine kingdom like a mountain. Violent waves of divine power washed over the entire palace. Dazzling light condensed in the hands of the god of light and fire, instantly piercing through the dragon's body. This was exactly what Odin wanted. She did not feel much pressure here. Perhaps because of the deterrence of the Black Emperor, Notorious did not put much effort into building his divine kingdom. He only used it as a gimmick to attract believers and was ready to withdraw at any time. As the god of light and fire squandered in the battle, his unstable foundation was rapidly collapsing and disintegrating. The laws of his divine kingdom were also affected. Although Odin was now at a disadvantage, and had to constantly use divine power to restore her body, she had more than just divine power. As time passed, the situation would eventually be reversed. Chapter 660. Leon knew that he could find him in the White Tower. Over the years, the Emperor had become more and more fond of going to the White Tower to dismiss the attendants and guards. He would stand alone at the top of the tower and look over the Golden Gate of Dawn, overlooking the capital of the empire, known as the City of 10,000 Cities. Zion, this ancient name, represented the center of the world, the absolute dominator of power. The ancestors of mankind set out from this remote land and continued to expand outward, establishing an epic empire in iron and fire. They firmly held the hegemony of the continent for more than 1,700 years, leaving behind countless glorious histories and legends. Following the wide stone steps from bottom to top, Leon climbed all the way to the top. Before he could even bow, the Emperor had already turned around. His expression was as indifferent as a bottomless pool, but his eyes were bright and spirited. His tone was gentle. "Are you ready? According to your order, I have already gathered the elite troops of the Dawn Legion. They can set off at any time," Leon reported. "Good." The Emperor nodded and said nothing more. He turned back to look at his city. "Is it really necessary to do this?" Leon walked closer and stood beside the Emperor. He said softly, "Those foreign races may have the intention to negotiate. Perhaps we can try to communicate with the Black Dragon and end this war peacefully." "Are you saying such childish words to comfort me, General?" The Emperor shook his head. "You and I both know that the Black Dragon's ultimate goal is to become the master of Iradia. It will not give up until it achieves this goal. And the peace talks you speak of are actually surrendering, giving up the sovereignty and dignity of the Rising Sun City and becoming a vassal of the Black Dragon, just like the Central Trade Federation." The general was silent. The sky suddenly darkened, and a ring of radiant moon appeared above the capital of Zion. Its carrier had been destroyed in the war in the central region, but the legendary mages of the court had quickly rebuilt it, creating an even more magnificent city in the sky. Emperor Inrither had personally named it Imola, which was similar to the name of the goddess of hope, Tamora. The hidden symbolism and meaning of the name were obvious. "Imola is about to depart. Don't you want to meet your children, Your Majesty?" the general asked. "What should be said has been repeated many times. There's no need to drag it out at this time. The journey of drifting in the astral world may not be as comfortable as living in the Black Dragon's shadow. You didn't say goodbye to your family and children either, did you?" Enriel asked, glancing at him. "I agree with the Emperor," General Lion said casually. The two looked at each other and smiled at the same time. "Lion, how long have I been the Emperor?" Enriel suddenly asked. "So far, it has been 260 years. You have also been the Legion Commander of Daybreak Legion for 260 years. Yes, 260 years ago, we banished the former Emperor who had gone astray, the Lich King Aglarin Lamorhan. At that time, the whole of Never-Setting Sun was bleeding, and Zion was almost turned into a city of bones. The scene of that time is still vivid in my mind," Enriel said softly. "My father has been killed. Otherwise, that dragon wouldn't have been able to grasp the clues of the Eye of Gawushi and remove the blood curse on the orcs. Is it because of this that the Emperor hates the Black Dragon? That's not it. Aglarin has embarked on the path of the undead. He can no longer be called a human. Of course, I will no longer see him as my father. Death is death. There's nothing to say." Enriel sneered. "It's just that for so many years, I've been proud of my wisdom and bravery. I've always wanted to fight for greater hegemony for Never-Setting Sunday. But today, I realize that in the 200 years that Emperor Enriel has been in power, Never-Setting Sun has neither broken through the boundary of the gods nor been able to resist the invasion of the foreign races. Everything I've done is even worse than Aglarin's. What a joke. We've defeated the Lord of the Abyss and captured the King of the Sea tribe, the demonic fish. Under your rule, the military force and civilization of Never-Setting Sun have risen steadily. In another 100 or 200 years, the radiant moon ring may really be able to deconstruct the rules of the gods. No one will laugh at such a feat. Lion shook his head. It's just that the black dragon carries the will of Eladia on its back. Even the gods were unable to predict its rise and were unable to contend against it. Of course, all the efforts we've put in will not have any effect. Never-Setting Sun, I'm not satisfied. Enriel reached out his hand toward the kingdom of Zion below, as if he wanted to grasp everything in front of him. The ancestors of mankind used countless blood and wisdom to create this empire and make it the overlord of the world. In 1,700 years, it has given birth to so many ideas, wealth, knowledge, and technology. Now it's like a ripe fruit, waiting to be picked by the foreign races. Lion clenched the sword in his hand. Now there's only one thing left for us to do, which is to risk everything to kill the black dragon or be killed by the black dragon. Enriel looked up at the sky, where colorful rainbows appeared under the dome. That was the bubble formed by Imola breaking through the world barrier. If we can kill the black dragon with everything we have, it'll be best. The Blackwing Empire will immediately fall apart, and we'll have enough time to regroup and deal with the incoming demons. If I'm killed by the black dragon, it'll be good too. The people on Imola will see that the Emperor would rather die than bow his head to the foreign races. This will give them the courage to survive in the difficult astral world. One day, the descendants of Never-Setting Sun will return to this land and take back their homeland, Enriel said in a low voice. Suddenly, he turned to Lion and asked in a thunderous voice, "Are your soldiers really ready for the battle? I'm talking about, they're ready to die." The general grinned. The warriors of the Dawn Legion naturally don't lack the courage to fight to the death. Enriel suddenly turned around and walked down the stairs. He shook off his expensive fur robe, revealing his crimson armor. Under the White Tower, there were armored soldiers everywhere. Their armors were like water, and their spears were like a forest. At the end of the year 1782, Iradia, the Emperor of Never-Setting Sun, led 30,000 soldiers of the Dawn Legion to launch a surprise attack on the Black Dragon Caesar, who was resting in the central Irvin Gobi Desert. However, they were burned to ashes by the Lord of the Infernal Prison before they could even wake up the sleeping Black Dragon. In the era when Never-Setting Sun and Blackwing Empire existed side by side, Enriel proposed the alien threat theory and regarded the northern clans as the biggest threat to mankind. He was always full of malice toward the Black Emperor, who controlled the alien races. However, the funny thing was that until the moment of his death, Enriel had never seen the legendary Blackwing King with his own eyes. "Weak people, even if you risk everything, you'll still die." Asliers mocked the defeated with a tone that bordered on disdain. After a long time, the Dark Emperor woke up from his deep slumber. Looking at the wreckage and flames that covered the battlefield, he was silent for a long time. Then, he sighed softly and ordered his own clan, "I appreciate the final rise of these people. I want to leave their names in history." 3 days later, the Black Dragon Emperor arrived in Zion. The wheel of history rolled forward, and the Fourth Iradia era began. Chapter 661. It was not until the Dawn Legion and the Radiant Moon Circle disappeared from this land that people were shocked to discover that Iradia no longer had the power to resist the Black Wings. The dragons' clans and fleets drove straight in from the north and south. In just 2 days, they captured more than 100 cities and swept through the whole territory of the Rising Sun City. Finally, they gathered under the capital of Ceylon, held back their claws and teeth, and waited calmly. 1 day later, the Black Dragon arrived in Ceylon. The huge empire that had ruled the continent for 1,700 years was destroyed. Soon, a grand celebration was held in Ceylon. The black dragon sat on the majestic throne and accepted the audience and worship of all the races in the world. Even the king of the deep sea, the demonic fish, was present. They expressed their allegiance to the supreme emperor and were willing to obey the orders of the black dragon. The demons in Iradia were frightened by the power of the black emperor and had to return to hell. At this point, Caesar became the veritable emperor of Iradia, the king of the sky, earth, and sea. Now there was only one person in the whole material plane who had not bowed to the black emperor, the lord of the infernal prison, Asliers. For a title that is empty, you still want to hold the so-called ceremony? You cowardly creatures are really vain and pitiful. Besides, the Dawn Legion was obviously destroyed by me. If you want to be crowned, I should be the emperor. This was what the lord of the infernal prison said. After a period of cynicism towards the black dragon, Asliers flatly refused the invitation to the black dragon's coronation ceremony and returned to his own Black Rock Mountain. Caesar did not mind the absence of the lord of the infernal prison. That guy was originally an extremely proud and conceited abyss lord. It was normal that he did not want to see the black dragon crowned with glory. It would be really strange if he came. You've completed the great task of unifying the continent and led Iradia into the fourth era. You've brought countless races, including the sea race and the human race, under your rule, creating an unprecedented empire. Great Emperor, please bestow a new name to this new empire. After the coronation ceremony ended, Ravenous Wolf Manager Hogg came to the Black Dragon King's throne and requested. Caesar nodded his head. The name of the Blackwing Empire was originally derived from the Blackwing's nest. It was a name that the humans had given to the Black Dragon and his kin. The Black Dragon had not rejected the name back then. However, at this very moment, this massive empire controlled all the races in Iradia. It did not seem appropriate to use the name of the Blackwing Empire. You didn't come up with a name? He asked. The suzerains have indeed discussed it, but only the great emperor himself can name it as the empire. Hogg continued to ask for instructions. Let's put this aside for now. I've called you here for something else. The black dragon in human form waved his hand and said, after conquering Iradia, apart from weakening the surrendered nobles of the Rising Sun City and eliminating the resistance, there are also some orders that need to be carried out throughout the territory. Hogg stood solemnly and listened seriously. This land has been unified after continuous wars. The empire should remove all kinds of taxes from the war period and reduce the taxes that all races need to pay. Let all races enter a state of peace and recuperation to prepare for the next war. Order the sea race to not swallow the islands on the sea. The empire should build harbors on those islands and let Iradia and Vilost be more closely connected. Measure the land of Iradia and Vilost. Divide Iradia into 36 provinces and Vilost into 12 provinces. Use the same laws. Let the common language become a real common language. While preserving the original languages of the clans, the empire will use the common language and writing system. The jackal manager had been listening silently. Only now did he ask, Your Majesty, should we set up 2 common languages and add the dragon language to the list of official languages of the empire? Caesar shook his head. The dragon language is a spell that naturally has magic power. It can be learned, but it is not suitable to be the common language of Iradia. Hogg understood. Mint coins in my name. After the coins are issued, the new coins should be able to circulate in any race and region and gradually replace the various currencies used in the past. Open up strongholds everywhere and let them pass through. Caesar continued. Make Blackwing City and Ceylon City the north and south centers of the empire. Tear down the outer walls of Blackwing City and Ceylon City and expand their scale. Open up strongholds and tear down the walls. Hogg said worriedly. In this way we will lose the basis for defense. Once we are attacked, where will the attack come from? Black Dragon grinned. Moreover, Our empire has tens of millions of soldiers. Their scaled armor, sharp blades, and fangs are the best walls of the Tangerine Empire. The Tangerine Empire. Hogg repeated the name and bowed respectfully. We will strictly carry out these orders. Emperor Iradia, your wisdom and power are unparalleled. After explaining the thoughts in his mind, Black Dragon left Ceylon City and prepared to go to Sotofia. When he passed by the outer court's meeting hall, he saw the busy Poisonfire Prince and Khan. He did not say much and just patted Khan's shoulder. Listen to Garen's teachings. You still have a lot to learn. Sotofia. The former kingdom of God had now become the lair of the wishing dragons. Countless giant dragons with distorted bodies and beautiful faces rose and fell in the barren and remote sand. They were tense and vigilant, looking at all outsiders with hostile eyes. Even the radiation dragons were not allowed to step in. But of course they would not stop Caesar. Black Dragon passed through the obstacles set up by the wishing dragons and saw Odin in the center of the dragons. My daughter. Odin, who was wrapped in hazy divine power, had shown her most primitive form, the weak appearance of a fairy dragon. The end of her long tail was curled into a circle. There were no horns on the top of her head, but two colorful tentacles like ribbons. Her neck was long and thin, with two pairs of thin wings, and grain-like dark purple scales covered her body. You came to see me, Dad. Odin closed her eyes and curled up. Her voice came from the air, sounding a little weak. I didn't expect Notorious to be killed by you. As expected of the invincible Twilight Lord. Caesar said with a smile. Of course. Odin's voice rose with a little pride. Although I borrowed the power of the divine spark that Dad gave me temporarily, even without its help, I can still defeat Notorious after a fierce battle. Black Dragon did not deny it. He just smiled. How is the situation? Everything is going well. Odin said briskly. In another 10 days, I will be able to digest the divine sparks of Notorious and Airy and raise my status to mid-level divine power. Dad, I will help you teach Asliers a lesson, so that he won't be noisy all day. Good. Black Dragon nodded. At the same time, an order from Emperor Iradia was quickly issued. It was to purify the faith in the whole empire, set the Twilight Lord as the only god recognized by the Tangerine dynasty, destroy the temples of the Lord of War, the Sun Lord, the Mother of Magic and other gods, and build a temple that belongs solely to Odin. Your order is the will of Iradia. The response from the other side of the psionic link came from the radiation dragon head. Wait. Before the psionic link was disconnected, Caesar suddenly remembered and added, keep the Temple of Bahamut, allow the faith of all races to the Platinum Dragon God, and set the Platinum Dragon God as the orthodox god of the Tangerine dynasty. Yes. The clan leader accepted the order again. After chatting with little Luna for a while, Black Dragon returned to Luna's side and accompanied her for half a month. After that, he brought the little one to Sotofia and waited together for Odin to complete his promotion. After a long time, everything was settled, and even the new Tangerine dynasty was on the right track. Black Dragon got away from the entanglement of the queen and his daughter and entered a deep sleep in the Black Rock Mountain. He had a hunch that this time, his sleep would be longer than any of the previous times, but the achievements he obtained would also be more than any of the previous times. That was the power that was enough to trample on the abyss. Chapter 662. This is the insect erosion passage? Odin's eyes widened as she stared at the huge sphere floating in the air in front of her. Tiny patterns appeared on its surface, and its entire body presented a dim yellow and red luster. It reminded her of those dead stars in the universe. It was cold and silent, but it also hid a rich and oppressive power. This stone sphere had a diameter of 15 meters, like the eye of a titan, but in Odin's eyes it was still too small. According to her father's description, The gravitational waves had crushed and torn apart the entire insect erosion passage, compressing it into such a small sphere. Although she did not see the full appearance of the insect erosion passage, it should not be much smaller than Iradia's. It was hard to imagine that this was the final appearance of a world after it was compressed. Odin was horrified. What kind of power did her father use to create such a cold and terrifying thing? Presumably, it would not be long before the people in the astral plane spread word by word that the Black Emperor had destroyed a world and made nearly 10 million demons into his collection, adding them to his display cabinet. She tried to touch the sphere and found that it was not as rough as it looked. It was smooth and flat to the touch, like touching a delicate ceramic. It was as if the whole thing would shatter with just the slightest force. Odin exerted her strength. She did not feel any feedback of power. The stone sphere was very heavy and firm. She immediately focused and used her divine power to push it, but the sphere with a diameter of 15 meters remained in a static state, not moving at all. On the other side, Aslir's was already shocked to the extreme. He was stronger and sharper than Odin. Even though they were separated by a world wall, he could still sense the destructive waves coming from the insect erosion passage. The black dragon really did not speak arrogantly and destroy the world that the demons had excavated for hundreds of years by himself. He looked at Odin trying to push the stone ball and suddenly remembered some history. It was said that not long after the creation of the world, the demon Daruz was born by the will of the abyss. It was the first demon in history and also the true ruler of the abyss. It was far more powerful than the current pillar gods. Daruz quickly passed the initial period of ignorance and completed the exploration of his birthplace. After that, he left the abyss for the astral plane, leaving behind a blasphemous sin slate at the edge of the origin sea. At that time, the gods used all means and methods, but they could not move the sin slate at all, let alone destroy it. It wasn't until the serpent of inception passed through the origin sea that the stone tablet was taken away. This was how Daruz arrogantly displayed his strength. Now, Aslir's was facing a similar display of power. The lord of the infernal prison had a bad feeling. "Unfortunately, this is the best I can do," Caesar said with a hint of regret. "Is this still not enough? Do you really want to compress a world into a bead and carry it around with you?" Odin finally gave up trying to push the stone ball and moved his little face closer. "That's not what I meant." Black Dragon shook his head. He had a clear idea. If he continued to strengthen the gravitational source of the insect erosion tunnel and continuously compress it, he would soon be able to create an absolutely dense, dark realm that distorted spacetime. This dark realm would devour all tangible or intangible objects. No element, soul, god, or even light would be able to escape. Unfortunately, he was still unable to do this with his current strength and body. After all, this was an authority that reigned above the gods. "Aslir's, why don't you come over and talk?" Caesar looked toward the lord of the infernal prison. "Showing off." Aslir's snorted inwardly. He glanced at the black dragon and slowly floated over. "The insect erosion tunnel has been destroyed. The threat of Iradia has been eliminated. You have nothing to worry about. Just go back and sleep," the flame devil said coldly. "However, you must be careful of the dark cloud monarch. He will not forget Fortrix's death." "Have you been to the bloody war in hell?" "Of course. Which lord of the abyss has not been to the bloody war?" However, that was many years ago. Now that the demons have invaded, the situation in hell might have changed a lot. "Dad wants to go to the bloody war?" Odin interrupted. "I want to go too. The bloody war is 100 times more intense than the insect erosion tunnel. It's not suitable for a young dragon." Aslir's curled his lips in disdain. "If this guy wants to go, then let him go alone." "Ah." Odin's little face fell. Lightning suddenly flashed in the dark sky, illuminating the undulating mountain ridges in the distance, as well as countless corpses strewn all over the place. This half-plane originally belonged to the Achilles birdman, but it was now occupied by Eladia's army. It was used by Odin as a node to attack the worm-eaten tunnel. It was already very late. The army was retreating and returning to the material world. Asliers scratched his chin in boredom and turned to the black dragon. You said you want to go to the bloody war in hell. Is that true? What does it have to do with you? It's true. Caesar looked up at the sky of the half-plane and seemed to be thinking about something. He smiled silently and grinned. The bloody war has nothing to do with me. However, I heard that Dios and Bahamut are both fighting in hell. They once gave me a lot of support. Now that I have the ability, of course I will find a way to help them. Looks like you really want to die. Asliers whispered. The Lord of the Dark Cloud, the Demon Prince, and the Undead King, the three Abyss Pillar Gods, have all come to hell. The Sun King, the Mother of Magic, and the Lord of the Elves are also fighting in the bloody war. The most terrifying one is Asmodeus, the Lord of 9 Hells. Are you sure about his attitude towards you? Don't mention the Abyss Pillar Gods. They are enemies. I don't care about the Lord of 9 Hells' attitude. He can't make enemies for himself at this time. As for the 3 lords, I have been hiding in Iradia for so long. There will be a time when I will go out. If they want to fight, they can try. Caesar smiled. Although hell is dangerous, it is not as terrible as you said. Dios, Mad Clamor, and those mutated dragons should be my allies. I should go and meet them. If you want to die, there is nothing I can do. But don't expect me to help you. Not with me? The blood war is meaningless to me. I want to return to the abyss. The Lord of the Infernal Prison snorted. When I first came to the material world, I did not expect to stay in Iradia for so long. I did not bring many important things with me. Now that the Abyss Pillar Gods have all come to hell, even the insect erosion and crushing of the tunnel and Fortrix death did not attract the attention of others. This is a great opportunity. I can take the opportunity to return to the abyss and take back what belongs to me. Return to the 606th floor of the abyss. Yes. After such a long time, a new lord may have been born there. But only I can open the door to the infernal prison. Aslier's tone was full of pride. I will be sublimated in the infernal prison. That is good. Caesar nodded and stretched out his claw. You wait in the infernal prison. I will bring the status of the Lord of the Dark Cloud here. Asliers looked at him in confusion. He hesitated for a moment and stretched out his flaming claw. I hope you can do it. I will. Caesar held it. Chapter 663. Odin stepped out of the colorful rift and saw the endless horde of demons. He instinctively assumed a defensive posture, his heart thumping violently. Asliers's reaction was the complete opposite. He appeared to be very excited and immediately began to unleash his power, showing off his specialty of slaughter and destruction. A storm of flames surged from the flat ground, almost instantly clearing the surrounding area. The Balrog Lord showed a satisfied smile and glanced at Odin, who was standing still. Move forward, let your army in. Enemy! Enemy! The demon warlord roared. As his voice fell, the tide of demons began to rise and fall violently. In an instant, thousands of axes were thrown. Those axes were so powerful that they were not thrown in a curved parabola, but in a straight line. Many unlucky lesser demons were directly torn apart by their own axes, causing even more casualties. The entire worm-eroded tunnel was stirred, like a pot of black water boiling. Before news of the enemy attack reached the Abyssal Lord, the horde of demons was already surging towards the tunnel, the clanking of armor converging into ear-piercing screams. Wish, Fisher. Odin brandished his spear. Don't stop, move forward, open up a path. Asliers ordered the soldiers who entered the worm-eroded tunnel one after another, playing the role of a lord for the first time. Iradia's army had already been reorganized, and was now walking out of the rift behind the lord of the infernal prison in an orderly manner. Wish dragons, radiation dragons, hypertrophic demon hounds, and heavy-armored orcs. They brandished their claws and sharp blades as soon as they appeared, throwing themselves into the cruel battle. The cannons of the Arcanitech devices spat out fire without any delay. The dragons roared, the demons howled, and the war began to heat up. Odin stole a glance at the lord of the infernal prison. The latter was letting out a deafening roar, wantonly unleashing his power, indiscriminately attacking every demon that tried to approach him. It was as if he was risking his life. Looks like he really can be trusted. Odin was completely relieved. Odin was shocked when she heard the howls of the beastmen. She was very familiar with the beastmen. These were the followers of the Black Emperor from the time of Blackwing's nest. They were not the kind of race that would scream so easily. She pierced through the dozen Hezru in front of her with her spear and looked over. A beastman's armor was shattered, and there were many holes in it. He threw away his battle axe and knelt on the ground. His face was red as he cried out in pain. The great chief of the orcs, Gaul, walked quickly to his side and shouted, "What are you doing? Stand up!" But he could not stand up. The injured orc warrior's breathing was as rapid as a drum. Before Odin could cast a group healing spell, the body under the armor quickly petrified and disintegrated, turning into a pile of stone that had lost its strength. Stung by a demon-hunting spider, there's no saving him. Khan flapped his fiery wings and flew over his head. He roared, "Maintain the formation and continue the battle." Boom! As Iradia's army pressed forward, blood-red lightning appeared in the sky, crisscrossing and dancing. That was the power of the chained king, Fortrick, suppressing the waves of flames of the lord of the infernal prison. Then, a figure covered in thorns walked out of the demon tide and squeezed into the field of vision of everyone on the battlefield. Odin instinctively stabbed with her spear. The indestructible sharpness forced the figure to stop. He stretched out his claws and grabbed the blazing divine light. He took a step back, stood still, and continued forward. A divine weapon from the material world? The chained king, Fortrick, spoke. His skin was a hard shell, densely covered with small curved barbs. His dark gaze passed through the layers of obstacles. He first glanced at Odin, then fixed his gaze on the lord of the infernal prison. "Long time no see, Asliers. You took the initiative to stand in front of me. Are you here to die?" Asliers did not speak. He stared coldly at his opponent. The demons were very afraid of Fortrick. They did not dare to move forward if he did not speak. They twisted their bodies and hissed softly. "He seems very strong." Odin raised his head and looked at the lord of the infernal prison. The brother of the king of Dark Cloud, the great lord of the abyss. Of course he's strong. The lord of the infernal prison fiddled with his bone claws and gathered the flames. But in the end, he's just a demon. It's not that he can't be killed. This guy has no brain. Nero paced silently and stood beside them. Khan also flapped his wings and landed. Devil controlled the starship to float above their heads. Iradia's strongest forces gathered together and pointed their weapons outwards. Long before we entered the tunnel, I had already guessed that even if it was not Fortrick, it would be Antoine or Kerbergs. Anyway, we would definitely encounter a great lord. Aziliers grinned and turned his face. "Now that the real enemy has appeared, little dragon fledgling, do you want to send all your spawns up there? It's up to you." Odin held the spear of eternity and pursed her lips tightly. The strength that Fortrick had just displayed was shocking. She had never seen anyone who could hold the edge of Iradia's divine weapon in such a way. Asliers shook his head and sighed. "You're indeed not suitable to be the emperor of the Black Dragon's clan. We did not choose this war. Iradia has no way out," Khan said. "The winner lives, the loser dies." He suddenly shot out and flapped his wings, spewing flames at the tall great lord standing in the middle of the demons. Fortrix's movements were not commensurate with his huge body. He was extremely agile and dodged with a slight twist of his body. He reached out his claws to grab Khan, who was approaching. Khan was also very agile. He had the bloodline of the ancestral dragon, the inheritance of the Inferno King, and the gift of the Black Emperor. He was not much weaker than Odin. He dodged and spun in the air. Kill! Odin let out a dragon-like roar from her throat. Everyone waved their weapons and rushed forward. There was nothing to talk about between the Iradia creatures and the demons. This war was not for benefit. The demons wanted to go through the worm-eroded tunnel and land in the material world to survive. They stopped the demons from landing in the material world to survive. The battle for survival was the most tragic and could only end with death. Everyone here had great combat skills and rich experience. They did not need to discuss with each other to cooperate with tactics. Asliers took the initiative to face Fortrix, while Odin chose to wait and attack. Her divine spear was sharp. Once it hit, it would immediately penetrate the great lord's body. The lord of the infernal prison was an elemental body. As long as he was careful enough, it would be difficult for him to be fatally injured. Asliers, the king of the abyss, has become the servant of a material creature. Even so, Fortrix still had strength left. He sneered in the battle. It seems that 3,000 years did not teach you a lesson. This time, I will lock you in a cage for 10,000 years. Odin glanced at the infernal king, who was getting more and more furious. She took a deep breath and the tide of divine power surged back. She raised the spear and rushed forward. She waved the spear and stabbed Fortrix's shell heavily. She attacked the same spot several times and directly stabbed into the depths of the great lord of the abyss body. Odin! Khan roared from the right. A black shadow charged over with profound energy. It was like a venomous snake that had crawled out from a cold corner and suddenly spat out fatal venom. Odin decisively let go of the eternal spear and revealed his third form like the dragon god. He retreated and spat out a destructive dragon's breath at that figure. He looked down at it disdainfully. It was the twin demon Ninos, another great lord of the abyss in the worm-eroded tunnel. It had been hiding in the darkness, waiting for an opportunity. It only attacked now. Its target was not the strongest in Iradia's camp, Asliers, but Odin, who was holding the eternal spear. However, Ninos didn't expect Odin to have a power that he hadn't used yet. Once his speed was touched by the breath, he immediately slowed down. Half of his body that he didn't have time to cover had already melted, disappearing into the scorching hot air. Odin let out a low roar. She did not even have time to speak before she pounced forward. She wanted to save Khan. The fire dragon's roar had not only alerted her but also attracted Fortrix's attention. Khan wanted to retreat, but he was entangled by the abyssal chain in the air and lost his balance. It was already too late. Fortrix's large hand reached out to grab his body. His wings were held back, and he did not have a powerful breath like Odin. He could not stop the chained king's giant hand. At the critical moment, Odin rushed over first. Her hind claws clamped onto Khan's shoulder and pulled with all her strength. Only when Khan's wings were torn apart did she manage to pull him out. The two dragons flipped in the air. The grayish-black dragon with a damaged body was thrown into the air by the dark purple dragon. Fortrix's hand turned to grab Odin. Or rather, his target had been Odin from the beginning. He did not care about the flames behind him and grabbed the annoying fly in his hand. Then, he paused for a moment and suddenly tightened his arm. Fortrix believed in his strength. This dragon would die very quickly. She would not have the chance to scream because the huge force would crush all the bones in her body, squash her organs, and turn her body into a mass of blood covered in scales. It was wonderful just thinking about it. However, the expected scene did not happen. A thin layer of barrier blocked his demonic power. No matter how hard Fortrick tried, the barrier did not break. The more strength Fortrick used, the deeper the barrier became. And it became deeper and deeper. Chapter 664. Odin is my child. Once you are in danger, I will appear by your side no matter when or where. This was what the Black Emperor had said to her. However, the worm-eroded tunnel was so far away from Iradia. There were countless half-planes and other planes between them. Her father was also in a deep slumber. Could he still sense the abnormality of the worm-eroded tunnel under all these obstacles? Odin was worried. Fortrick was furious. Demonic power roared in his body and poured down on the claw like a raging river. As he continued to increase his strength, the barrier let out an irresistible cry and small cracks appeared on its surface. This was a sign that the barrier was about to collapse. The chained king felt a burst of joy. He did not even think about where the barrier on Odin's body came from. He only stared at the struggling dragon, a cruel light flashing in his eyes. The sky seemed to be collapsing. The loud explosion forced everyone to look up and shift their attention to above their heads. In the sky above the colorful worm-eroded tunnel, a 10,000-meter-long dimensional barrier collapsed, revealing a huge gap. Turbulence swept across the land in an instant, sending many weak demons and nightmares into the void. In the gap in the dome, two terrifyingly large claws could be seen. Before the demons could roar, a head poked in from the outer realm. Its eyes were as bright as the eternal and inextinguishable sun. It looked around disdainfully and examined everything inside. A terrifying beast was lying on top of the worm-eroded tunnel at this moment. Fekalik's heart turned cold. He had a premonition that something bad was about to happen. That majestic aura showed the absolute power of the invader, causing his confidence to instantly shrink back into the cold underground cave. But even so, the Abyssal Lord still revealed the viciousness of a demon. He erupted with all his strength in an instant, determined to crush the dragon in his hand into a pulp before anything else. Unfortunately, he would not get what he wanted. A strong gravitational force acted on Fortrick from all directions. Not only did it force him to give up his grip, but it also pulled this Lord of the Abyss off the ground and pulled him into the air. Roar! For the first time, the Abyssal Emperor, who had always been at ease while surrounded by enemies, let out a roar from his throat. The loud roar showed the enormous pressure he was under at this moment. The demonic chains that once entangled Khan appeared again, densely packed and crisscrossing in the void, trying to help him stabilize his body and strength. However, all of this was in vain. Under the blazing golden gaze of the behemoth, the demonic chain collapsed and shattered as soon as it appeared, disintegrating into illusory energy. Frederick's arm, which was holding Odin, suddenly broke and blood splattered out. He could no longer maintain the stability of his body. In front of an irresistible force, he was dragged into the sky at an extremely fast speed, unable to resist and unable to stop. "Black Dragon!" Fortrick roared. No one answered. What followed was his own mournful wail. He rose into the air, and his entire body exploded in an instant. It was as if countless hands of ancient gods were pulling his body from different directions. His head, wings, limbs, and tail were pulled out of his body. All of his flesh and blood spurted out like a bright red flower blooming in the air. The demons who looked up at the Lord of the Abyss could even see the ghastly stubble of his broken body. A few demon warlords who were closer wanted to save him, but before they could get close, they were frozen in the air. The demon warlord was startled for a moment. Then, he let out a wail louder than Fortrick's. His body suddenly exploded, torn into pieces. Blood and bones dripped everywhere. More and more demons were on the move. All of them surged forward, but the result was the same. They were like moths flying towards a prairie fire. No matter how many of them there were, they couldn't extinguish the flames in the slightest. There was a terrifying power in that area. It was difficult to see, but it truly existed. Every demon was like a salute shot into the sky, blooming with flowers of flesh and blood. This is? Ninos could not believe his eyes. He retreated step by step. Such a scene would make an abyss lord tremble in fear. No one answered him. No one could make a sound. Nero, Con, and even Asliers tried their best to stay away from that area. They could only watch as countless chaotic demons rushed to their deaths and were torn to pieces by that unfathomable power. When the wails finally stopped, a large area of the worm-eroded tunnel had been cleared. The ground was filled with bloody limbs and flesh. The exposed bones were twisted into an unimaginable shape. It made people feel the pain these demons had endured before they died. The flames on Asliers's body surged. This scene was even more terrifying than burning people to charcoal and then trampling them to ashes. It was like a tragedy that the most powerful and cruel evil god could create. The air was filled with the stench of blood. The worm-eroded tunnel was clearly hotter than the material world, but no one could sweat at this moment. They only felt that their bodies had completely lost all feeling, as if they were in cold ice. Emperor Caesar. With extreme respect and fear, the Iradia respectfully knelt down to welcome the arrival of the Black Emperor. Fortrick was not dead yet. His strong vitality allowed him to reconstruct his body with a small piece of flesh. As soon as he stood up, he quickly distanced himself from the black dragon and stood at the edge of the worm-eroded tunnel. He cautiously and fearfully looked around. His eyes revealed a terrifying grayish-white color. Silence. Even breathing could not be heard. There was only the sound of burning flames. Odin and Asliers looked at each other. Only then did they gasp for breath with great difficulty. Their breathing was abnormally heavy as they stepped forward. Father. Her expression was timid, and she no longer called him father. Instead, she obediently called him father. Unlike his usual appearance, the black dragon's body was clearly undergoing some kind of intense transformation and had yet to complete. Odin realized that he might have caused trouble and disturbed his father's slumber. This is the worm-eroded tunnel? The black dragon's voice was hoarse. It seemed that he had not completely woken up. This time, he had slept for far longer than before. However, he had also absorbed and digested a far greater achievement than before. Conqueror, king of the world, emperor of all races, the Iradia is united by your hand. Power and power, power and power, tempting twins. Reward. Neutron life form reconstruction, gravity control. This is the worm-eroded tunnel, your majesty. The demons are about to step onto our land. The Tangerine dynasty can only choose war. Con replied with a firm tone. He did not dare to raise his head. After making a deal with the devil, Con had obtained the black dragon's bloodline. Therefore, he could understand a lot of knowledge that had been lost in the river of time. Although the Black Dragon Emperor had not completed his transformation, the bits and pieces he revealed had awakened the fear that originated from Khan's bloodline. The only ones that could make the Black Dragon ancestor afraid were the good dragon King Bahamut and the evil dragon Mother Tiamat. In fact, these two dragon gods had a common identity, the ancestor dragon. Chapter 665. The battle suddenly stopped. All the demons looked at the black dragon who had landed on the ground and stood there in shock. No one would forget the tragedy that had just happened. Even the cruel-chained King Fortrick did not dare to attack recklessly. He stood at the edge of the tunnel, breathing rapidly. His eyes were filled with fear and hatred as he stared at the giant figure on the battlefield. The demons did not attack again, and Caesar did not care. He just closed his eyes and breathed slowly as if he was sensing the smell of the tunnel. After a while, the black dragon's stiff face gradually showed some expression. He had completely awakened from his deep sleep. He lowered his head and smiled warmly. "My daughter! Father!" Odin still looked like he had done something wrong. "I'm sorry. No need to apologize," Caesar interrupted her. "Even if I was not disturbed, my sleep is nearing its end. Next, I just need to transform into a new body. This work can be done when I'm awake. Compared to this, I'm more concerned about your safety." "You've done well." He turned around and looked at the waves of demons. "If it were me, I would have made the decision to attack the tunnel." "You've become stronger." Asliers walked over and asked in a low voice. "Yes." Caesar turned to him. "You might not need 100 years to get your reward." "My reward? You said you wanted the position of the monarch of the dark cloud." "I remember that." Black Dragon moved his body, and his skin and scales quickly grew. "Graz Zt, the Abyss Pillar God, is the strongest demon. If it's him, he should be able to easily destroy the tunnel. With my current strength, I can give it a try." "What do you plan to do?" Asliers asked. Caesar glanced at Asliers, then turned to look at Odin, Nero, and Khan. He then looked at the Iradia army. "Retreat and protect yourselves." Asliers was stunned, then became furious. The Black Dragon's words clearly placed him in the ranks of the weak. Did he want the Lord of the Infernal Prison to protect him? Asliers wanted to jump up and roar. "I didn't expect you to overestimate yourself to this extent. If you want to die, you can find a more comfortable place," and so on. However, based on his performance just now, the Black Dragon seemed to have obtained great power in his sleep. It was best not to jump to conclusions. Asliers thought for a moment and stared at the Black Dragon with killing intent for a few seconds. Finally, he snorted coldly, turned around, tore open the planar barrier, and stepped out. "Dad!" Odin was a little worried. "Don't worry." Caesar's voice was gentle, but his words left no room for doubt. Khan then led the army to retreat. They returned from the crack the Lord of the Infernal Prison had opened and exited the worm-eaten tunnel. Fortrick watched all of this coldly. He was sending a message to the Lords of the Abyss, asking for the Dark Cloud Monarch's support. However, the Blood War was 100 times more intense than the worm-eaten tunnel. Every inch of the abyss was difficult to move forward. The Pillar Gods could not withdraw their power at all. That was why the demon army did not receive the order to attack even after the invaders from Eladia had disappeared. However, there were some demons with lower intelligence who could not hold back their murderous thoughts. They raised their blades and charged forward, but they were quickly crushed and could not cause any waves. Caesar flapped his wings and rose into the sky. He closed his eyes and opened them again. He could not feel the flow of power. It was very calm. Ninos trembled. Although he was not as strong as Fortrick, he was very smart. His senses were far superior to the other lords of the abyss. At this moment, he suddenly felt a sense of impending doom. He wanted nothing more than to flee back to the abyss and hide in his lair on the 763rd level. However, he could not move at all. An invisible force was holding him back, forcing him to stay where he was. Ninos's body trembled slightly. He did not doubt that if he resisted, he would soon meet a tragic end. He would be torn to pieces like Fortrick. At this moment, the chained king finally sensed something and roared, "Attack! Kill it! Kill it!" Tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of demons rushed into the sky. As far as the eye could see, there were humanoid figures with wings. Every pair of eyes flashed with a fierce light. They slammed their bodies, waved their blades and claws, and cut the air with the sound of the wind. However, no one could get close to the Black Dragon. The Black Dragon only glanced sluggishly at the demons that were rushing towards him. The group of demons instantly dispersed, as if his gaze had defeated them, causing fear in the hearts of the demons. In reality, there was a terrifying and respectable force field that was spreading out, forcing them to return to their original positions. The huge space was filled with the howls of demons. A demon general smelled the scent of destruction. It roared and lashed out at the demons in front of it. It rushed to the edge of the realm wall, but halfway there, its body exploded into a mass of scarlet blood. Hordes of demons began to flee, no longer obeying the orders of their lord. The worm-eroded passage was a space that the demons had painstakingly carved out, but at this moment, they wanted to escape. Like thousands of undead fleeing the divine kingdom of the God of Light, the worm-eroded passage had silently changed owners. The master of this world was giving them the order of death. The black dragon circled above the worm-eroded passage. The force field of this world was changing around him. The sea of gravity was rising, and he wantonly used his power. Every move he made caused violent waves. It was as if he was judging the demons, but also as if he was dancing. When everything was done, the black dragon hovered above the worm-eroded passage. His wings and body formed a huge cross. His golden gaze focused on the thousands of demons as he softly said, "Gather." Thunder roared, lightning flashed, and a storm appeared. Under the focus of Caesar's gaze, the irresistible source of gravity had already appeared and spread out in all directions. The Earth's crust was lifted up layer by layer and swept towards the source of gravity. Even the clouds in the sky could not escape and were pulled into particles. All matter and life rushed in that direction without any regard for their own safety. Fortrick fell heavily to the ground. His powerful hind legs could no longer support his body. He seemed to be bound by an invisible net and dragged towards the end of his life. "No!" The Lord of the Abyss roared. His demon power surged. His huge eyes flowed with changing light. He raised his head forcefully and stared at the figure in the sky. "I am the chained King Fortrick. Only I can decide whether I live or die," he roared. The demon chains appeared again and wrapped around Fortrick's body, helping him stand up in a spasming posture. "The worm-eroded passage is not my end." All the demons were drawn into the terrifying source of gravity. Only Fekalik was moving in the opposite direction. He resisted the supreme force and walked forward step by step. His face was covered in scarlet blood, and his expression was ferocious and terrifying. He suddenly ran, roaring and madly running through the hurricane and dust storm. He used all the power he could muster and jumped high towards the black dragon. He let out a deafening roar and his claws flowed with fatal light. Forget about killing Caesar. As long as he could injure Caesar, everything would end. The black dragon stood in the void and darkness. His dark golden eyes were not moved. He looked at the chained king who was about to pounce in front of him and grinned at him. He stretched out his hooked toe and touched him lightly. "Goodbye," he said. The gravitational force suddenly magnified. Fortrick could no longer move forward. His body was pulled until it was deformed. He froze in the air for a moment and then flew back at an even faster speed, crashing into the source of the gravitational force. The impact shattered the chained king's bones. Fortrick howled. It was not because of the pain, but because he could not struggle. The force behind him was firmly suppressing him, making it impossible for him to move. In front of him, countless demon limbs, blades, and broken armor smashed into his body, turning into the tiniest powder. Under the influence of the gravitational force, these fine powder turned into countless sharp needles that pierced his body bit by bit. Everything was turning into powder. The wind swept through and swept away everything. The worm-eroded passage was heading towards an irreversible destruction. Fortrick could no longer make a sound. Chapter 667. Above the river Styx, within the crimson moon, there seemed to be a layer of molten gold flowing around. A warm, bloody wind swept across the area, accompanied by the mutterings of the devils. This 10-odd li-long river bend was called Thorn Bend. To the south was a bottomless abyss, and to the north was the criss-crossed Liao Castle. This section of the river bend was slightly concave to the land, and was a rare shallow bend for anchoring. The magic power of the water of the Styx River was weak here, so it would not swallow the hull. The imps gathered there and rode on their pure black feathers on the river Styx. Every day, hundreds of thousands of fresh souls were brought to shore. This was something that had never happened before. Most of the souls had already been determined before they entered the 9 hells. These currencies belonged to the various dukes of hell. They would receive their receiver at a certain point in the river Styx and be thrown into prison wagons to be sent to the territory of their intended ruler. After a long period of oppression, they would be squeezed dry of all their value. But with the invasion of the abyss, the first level of hell had completely fallen. Duke Norton had also left his humble servants forever. The souls that originally flowed to the first level of hell were now ownerless. The other dukes couldn't just sit by and watch the precious treasures disappear, so they fought for the ownerless souls before the river Styx flowed into the abyss. A fight of this scale would definitely lead to chaos. The master of the second level of hell wanted to stop it, but it was a joint decision of the Duke of Hell. It involved everyone's interests. Even the Lord of 9 hells sent people to participate. So, the Duke of Xian of the second level of hell had no choice but to make an agreement that only the weakest and lowest-ranked imps were allowed to enter Thorn Bay to reduce the chaos as much as possible. It was time to harvest again. The boiling water flowed down the river with the wailing souls. Immediately, hundreds and thousands of devils came forward. They stretched their necks and sniffed at the unfortunate newcomers. They used their steel forks to fish the souls out of the river while pushing the other Kuro to the side. The local devils referred to these outsiders as shameful thieves. They had squeezed their way in from the other planes of hell, paddled the Kuro, and picked out every valuable soul. After capturing them, they locked them up in tall soul-imprisoning wagons and dragged them back to the plane where their masters were. Spike demons and barb demons were the most despicable demons. It was very difficult for them to find an opportunity to rise. They were treated as dust on the battlefield, and it was even more difficult for them to obtain the qualifications to go fishing in the material world. They could only rely on their own labor to accumulate rewards bit by bit. After working for hundreds of years, they could finally be promoted. The appearance of Thorn Bay was a good thing for them. They only needed to rely on a pitchfork and a bunch of Kuro to swim in the blood-stained river. As long as they could find a valuable spirit soul, they would be rewarded by their superiors and have the possibility of being promoted. In the river bend, Kullo and MTA formed a team. They flapped their little red wings, clenched their teeth, and pushed the other little demons away. They dragged Kuro to the river bank, the steel pitchforks in their hands full of howling souls. They were demons from the second level of hell. They didn't look very big, and they looked like round balls with eyes, mouths, horns, and fleshy wings. Someone had been waiting for them for a long time. The dark-skinned soul catcher was standing on the shore that was covered in blood. Wearing a ragged armor, the prison cart beside him was waving its green claws at them. Bawo bawo. 2 little demons jumped on the Kuro, waving their pitchforks. We'll call it a day. We got the best one. These 2 rolling ball demons and the captor of souls could be called colleagues. They were loyal to a powerful mind-eater. Every day, when it was time to harvest, the captor of souls would wait here. Kullo and MTA would snatch the most valuable souls from the river Styx and send them to their superiors. How good is the best one this time? The captor of souls grinned, revealing a mouth full of eerie teeth. Although his face was repulsive, his words didn't have a hint of terror. It seems to be a king of some material world. A soul like this will definitely be able to squeeze out a lot of sin. Kullo waved his pitchfork. Bawo opened the prison wagon, and Kullo and MTA stuck their pitchforks in, shaking the souls into the prison wagon like they were shaking insects. This was the happiest time of the day. Although a portion of the souls in the prison wagon had to be handed over to their superiors, the Heart Eater, the rest would be sent to the Grand Duke. Every one of them could make the Grand Duke write an extra line in their book. At this rate, you'll be able to complete your promotion after another year of work. The captor of souls encouraged them. At that time I'll be Cullo the Barb Demon, The little demon tossed up and down, feeling proud. Suddenly he froze. The three demons turned their heads and saw a figure on the riverbank not far away. It was a giant dragon that was hundreds of meters long. Its body was covered in bright and hard scales. Its body was thick and strong, and its head was shockingly large. There were twisted horns on it, and its fangs were fierce. When it looked around, its eyes flashed with red light. It appeared just like that, tore through the world barrier, and suddenly descended. Enemy, 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 enemy attack! Cullo was terrified. He jumped up like a bouncing ball. MTA quickly covered his mouth. In order to deal with the threat from the abyss, the Master of Nine Hells hoped that all the gods, civilizations, and races could join the bloody battle against the demons. Hell opened the door that had been closed for a long time to the astral world. Many creatures from the outside world came to Hell because of this. Among them were many evil creatures that were lured by benefits, but there were also many kind creatures that voluntarily resisted the abyss. The Master of Nine Hells welcomed all of them. He claimed that as long as they did not destroy the ecology and order of Hell, they were friends of the demons. The Duke of Hell took out all kinds of treasures, each of which was extremely valuable, and generously gave them to every living creature that bathed in blood in the bloody battle. That was why dragons weren't a rare sight in Hell. Chromatic dragons, metal dragons, and many other legendary dragon species, whose identities were hard to identify, had all left their footprints in this world, whizzing past the blood-red dome. It was just that the dragon's appearance was too strange. It was very scary, and its expression was full of aggression. That was why Cullo cried out in surprise. They looked at each other, and for some reason, there was a sudden awkward silence. After a while, MTA gathered his courage and flapped his wings. "Are you going to join the army of the various races of Hell?" Caesar looked at the somewhat timid little demon in front of him. Suddenly, he felt that the Hell of Bator seemed to be different from what he had imagined. He smiled slightly, and the lines on his face softened. "How do I join?" "That depends on which army you want to join. The armies of King Tiamat, King Bahamut, King Pharazer, and King Dios are all the armies of the dragon army that fought in the bloody battle," MTA explained excitedly. "But this is the second level of Hell, and those armies are near the Skull Pillar. You can join our army first and enter the first level of the battlefield. If you want, I can take you to see the Duke of Xi'an now." These words were true, but MTA also had his own thoughts. This dragon looked very powerful. If he could introduce it to the Duke of Xi'an and let it join the army of the demons, he could accumulate a lot of merits. Caesar did not answer. The black dragon stepped on the rocks and approached the river bank. It looked at the demons wandering on the river Styx. They sat on the Kuro and fought to salvage the souls in the river. They pushed and shoved each other in disdain. It was a novel feeling. Chapter 668. I didn't expect there to be such enjoyment in Hell. The black dragon squinted his eyes and said, "It's really good." He was flipped over with his belly facing up, soaking in the thick soup of floating poppy petals. Rather than calling it a bath, it would be better to call it a lake. Even the black dragon's gigantic body could tumble and leap about in it without being affected. This thick soup not only had a strong fragrance of flowers and plants, but it was also very effective. Not long after soaking in it, one could feel wisps of heat seeping in from between the scales, relaxing the limbs and tail. At this time, the lake was filled with incense and fog. It was impossible to tell whether he was in Hell or in God's kingdom. The water you use for bathing is taken from the Styx River. There are treasures such as demon blood, frozen earth, and marrow of desire soaked in it. Although the taste and effect are very good, it is after all highly poisonous. If you are not strong enough, the vicious energy will invade your heart and you will sacrifice your life to the Master of Nine Hells. Grand Duke Sean of the second floor of hell said slowly. His appearance was like a high noble of the human world, without the characteristics of a devil. His tone was low and gentle. Unfortunately, I didn't come this time to visit the scenery of hell. The black dragon didn't care about the Devil Duke's words. He still raised his head and said, "About the collective invasion of the abyss and the bloody battlefield, what does the master of the second floor want to tell me?" The Black Emperor crushed the worm-eroded passage with his own strength. Such a great power is no different from the Lord God in God's kingdom. In front of you, I dare not call myself master. The Devil Duke said humbly, "About the bloody battlefield, the latest situation now is that we regained control of the Pillar of Skulls a week ago and forced the demons to retreat to the Wailing Wilderness. The Abyss is currently preparing for a counterattack." "I'm very curious." The black dragon turned over and lay on the water. Although the Abyss is known as bottomless and has countless lords and armies, there are only a few most powerful pillar gods and kings. How can they conquer the Pillar of Skulls and threaten the entire Hell of Baator? In fact, the enemy we have to face is not only the demons. Devil Duke was silent for a moment before asking, "Has the Black Emperor heard of the outer gods?" "I once heard Dios mention that it was because the outer god's projection appeared at the bottom of the abyss and was about to squeeze into the abyss that caused the demons to flee and invade the Hell of Baator and the material world." Caesar thought for a moment. "Is there really such a thing?" "Yes." The Duke Fiend confirmed, "A new kind of creature was born in the abyss. It is called the Dominator. It is a demon that was transformed from the corruption of the outer gods. It is something even crazier and more violent than the demons. The Dominator will sometimes attack the demons, but its greater desire is to break through the boundary of hell. After transforming into a Dominator, their lifespan will be shortened to just a few days, and their strength will increase exponentially. This greatly strengthens the legion of demons, making the invasion even more difficult to deal with. No wonder hell opened its doors to the entire astral world and summoned all the powerhouses to participate in the battle in the name of the Master of Nine Hells." Caesar replied casually and was silent for a long time. His eyes flashed with a strange light. He had an inexplicable sense of familiarity with the name Dominator. It reminded him of the terrifying eyeball under his right wing. Even after advancing to the neutron form, the eye did not disappear. It was like some kind of lingering mark that could not be removed, following him like a shadow. The three demon pillar gods abandoned their palaces and left the abyss because they were afraid of corruption. They settled down in the wailing soil on the first level of hell. However, due to the indulgence of the three pillar gods, the Master of Nine Hells guessed that a very powerful Dominator might have been born at the bottom of the abyss. "What else do the demons know about the outer gods?" Caesar asked. The Duke Fiend of Hell smiled with a hint of self-mockery in his smile. After thinking for a while, he said, "This is not the first time the outer gods have appeared. The astral world we live in has already been invaded by the outer gods once. At that time, the ancient gods led by the Snake of Inception, Dragon Creator Io, and Nether King Kalankalat repelled the invasion at the cost of their lives. Billions of years have passed, and the ancient gods we revere cannot be resurrected. However, the heavily injured outer gods have gradually awakened from their slumber. They wander outside our world, but there will gradually seep into the astral world. If we don't cut them off, soon, even their real bodies will squeeze in." The black dragon stood up from the lake, shook off the water on his body, and looked into the Duke Fiend of Hell's eyes. "If we repel the demons and seal the abyss, can we stop the outer gods from descending? In fact, it's not possible." The Duke Fiend of Hell's face was filled with sadness. "The outer gods have already awakened. Even if we repel the demons and abandon the abyss, we can only stall for time and struggle at death's door. The outer gods will still descend in the astral world in at most 1,000 years. 1,000 years is not short, the black dragon said. Yes, but no matter what we do, no matter how we fiddle with the world's orbit, we can't reverse the outcome of destruction. In fact, the efforts of the ancient gods are only delaying it once. The Duke Fiend of Hell's voice was hoarse, and there was an unusual fluctuation of emotions. The outer gods will not die. They will only keep returning. Caesar was silent. He had felt the outer gods time and time again in the Black Dream, so he could not understand the Duke Fiend of Hell's pessimism and despair. In his opinion, the outer gods were not immortal. I'm telling you this because the Black Emperor is a powerhouse in the astral world and has the right to know. Moreover, I've also received the authorization of the Master of Nine Hells. The Duke Fiend of Hell calmed down and said, although we devils are called evil, we are also a race that emphasizes absolute order. The truth behind this matter is not even known to many of the new gods. If this matter is spread, I'm afraid it will cause large-scale panic and chaos. Many devils will be annihilated in self-doubt. I only hope that you can keep this a secret and try not to spread it. He bowed to the black dragon. Please understand. When he finished speaking, there was a rustling sound. Dozens of lustful demons who were in charge of cleaning the black dragon's scales and were currently kneeling at the side were stunned. They immediately became uneasy and pulled out their sin whips while vigilantly looking around. The Duke Fiend of Hell saw that they were nervous and also looked around. He shook his head at the black dragon. It's the sound of the first level of hell. Sometimes, when the battle between the powerhouses is too intense, the aftershocks will even penetrate the boundary wall and directly shake the area we live in. The rustling sound rang out again. This time, Caesar heard it clearly. It was not the aftershocks of a battle, but something that stood outside the world and gently scraped the second level of hell. The boundary wall collapsed due to the powerful pressure, producing a pealing sound. The next moment, the sound became deafening. The ground suddenly bulged, and countless pieces of Earth's crust and gravel were thrown into the sky. It was like a newborn dragon breaking an eggshell. A giant snake without a head or tail appeared under the broken boundary wall. It curled up and stretched like a giant pillar connecting heaven and earth. All creatures in front of it were as small as ants and mosquitoes. Chapter 669. The black dragon flapped its wings and took off from the ground. It glanced at the Duke of Hell and found that the master of the second level was also frightened. The thing stretched out in an instant and then struck down from above with a fierce wind. Caesar stepped back casually, and the headless and tailless snake smashed heavily into the place where he had been standing. Its heavy body, which was thousands of meters long, caused the originally bulging ground to sink, splashing dirt and stones everywhere. The sky immediately darkened, and an ink-like energy blocked out the sunlight. Countless demons were running around on the ground. Some were shouting, some were roaring, and some were giving orders. The senior demons wanted to stabilize the situation, but they couldn't find their superiors in the chaos. A strange, strong stench came out from the monster. The ground shook again, and then there were continuous howls. The howls rose from the ground to the sky, as if the demons were being lifted up by something. The howls were so shrill that it was as if 1,000 knives were scraping their bones. Then they all quieted down. There were muffled sounds in the air. Wet and hot rain fell on the ground, bringing with it a strong smell of blood. All the blood on the demons that were caught was squeezed out in an instant. The Devil Duke's expression changed slightly. He roared, and a heavy chain hammer that had to be held with both hands appeared in his hand. When the chain hammer appeared, a powerful thunderstorm swept across with the Duke as the center. Dazzling lightning condensed on the hammer, which looked majestic. This seems to be the divine weapon of Talos, right? The black dragon did not seem to have any intention of attacking. He floated in the air and praised the Duke's weapon. Compared to the demons, the dragon's treasure house is as funny as the collection of a baron in the countryside. The Black Emperor is really knowledgeable. This is an item that the Lord of Storm gave to Hell in a trade. The Duke of Hell said, "The Lord of 9 Hells gave it to me as a reward. I've been using it for many years." "What is this?" Caesar asked. "We're very familiar with the Chaos Abyss, but that place is known to be bottomless after all. There are some monsters that even the devils have never seen before. What's strange is that it broke through the dimensional barrier of the first level of Hell, and the powerful beings fighting in the first level should have been able to stop it." The hurricane once again pressed down from above. The lower half of that thing's body was still hidden in the Earth's crust, but just the exposed part was already as heavy as 1,000 caddies. After it was lifted up, it smashed down with a whistling momentum, as if it wanted to split the Earth in half. Of course, the Duke of Hell would not let it create such chaos. After a few flashes, he approached the monster and swung his chain at it. However, the monster's skin was like water. When it came into contact with the spikes of the hammer, it sank deeply, easily negating the power of the weapon. However, the attack was not over yet. The Duke of Hell twisted the handle of the chain, unleashing the power of calamity. Arcs of electricity danced wildly on the monster's body. However, that thing did not seem to feel anything. After randomly slapping a few times, it no longer attacked the devils on the ground. Instead, it suddenly straightened and continued to climb upwards. Its length seemed to have no end, reaching the sky in an instant. Enemy attack. Gather the highest-ranked devils around you. Spread out and prepare to counterattack. The Duke's words spread throughout the second level of Hell. With the command, the devils immediately took action. They formed a battle formation nearby, holding their weapons and waiting. The Black Dragon nodded slightly. After all, they were creatures of the Order faction. The devil's discipline was much stronger than the demon's. It wants to break through the dimensional barrier here and go to a higher level of Hell. Looking at the rising monster, the Devil Duke realized. Next, the master of the second level began to use his full strength. His combat power was similar to that of a mid-level god, and the weapon in his hand was also a high-grade divine weapon. Such a Devil Duke could easily slaughter a low-magic world. He swung the flail of the Lord of Storms, hitting the monster heavily again and again. The snake had no head or tail. Its body was slippery and slippery. There were no scales on its skin, only countless black protrusions that looked like abscesses. It was being hit, and violent arcs of electricity danced wildly on its body, tearing apart its skin and muscles. The continuous attacks finally caused the headless and tailless snake to feel pain. It suddenly stopped, no longer climbing upwards. The abscesses burst. From top to bottom, thousands of eyes opened at the same time. Countless rays of death swept across, and those eyes opened and closed crazily as if they had broken free from their shackles. Every eye was bloodshot, and looking at them together, it was as if there were countless human faces all over its body. Some were angry, some were frightened, and some were sad. Every expression was hysterical. Even in the deepest nightmares, it was difficult to see such an indescribable taboo. The light beams shot out from the eyes plowed through the ground, leaving behind deep ravines. The armors of the devils were like paper, unable to resist at all. After being swept by the light beams, they immediately exploded, causing a rain of blood to splatter everywhere. "This is the ruler," the Devil Duke murmured. An indescribable fear gripped his heart. "It wants to break through the dimensional barrier of the second level." He then roared, "Your Majesty, Black Emperor, I can no longer stop it. I beg for your help." "I seem to have seen this thing many times," Caesar whispered, feeling a sense of déjà vu. He stared at the headless and tailless thing, hovering in the air, motionless. In the destructive rays of light, the black dragon's body seemed to be immortal, completely unaffected by the attacks. He stretched out his claws, opened them in the direction of the headless and tailless snake, and slowly twisted to the right. Black Emperor. The Duke of Hell, who was waiting on the side, was dumbfounded. He didn't know what Caesar was going to do. He didn't feel the surge of power, nor did he feel the flow of psionic energy. Were the creatures of the material world so strong that they could kill their enemies with just a posture? The monster gave him the answer to his question. The headless and tailless snake froze again, no longer climbing up. This time, it didn't attack, but instead twisted wildly. Although it didn't make a sound, everyone seemed to have heard its howls. The monster twitched and spasmed, and its eyes no longer shot out light, as if it had gone blind. It repeatedly slammed on the ground, making earth-shattering noises. Then, it was cut in half from the middle. It was as if there was an invisible giant guillotine that cut its body in half. However, the monster still wasn't dead. The two halves of its body were still twisting wildly. Caesar tightened his claws. This time, countless giant guillotines cut the strange snake's body from all directions and angles, cutting it into 100, 1,000, 10,000, and endless parts. No matter how strong this guy's vitality was, it would be difficult for it to survive. Most of its body was twisted into dust by Caesar, and the ends slid into the ground, falling to the first level of hell with the broken stubble. Chapter 670. Avernus, on the first level of the 9 levels of hell. The entire plain was scorched. Everywhere was a wasteland covered with gravel. Occasionally, there would be towering mountains and slanted hills. Burning fireballs would fall from the sky at any time. The air was filled with a poisonous mist of blood. The black dragon flapped his wings and hovered in midair as he stared at the skull pillar. The Black Emperor's power is truly astonishing. If it weren't for the fact that I swore an oath to the Lord of the 9 levels of hell, I would even be willing to pledge my loyalty to you. Even I am unable to identify what this monster is. If you really want to know, perhaps you should go to the first level to find out. This was what the Duke of Xi'an on the 2nd level of the 9 levels of hell had said after Caesar tore apart the headless and tailless snake. Thus, the black dragon descended on the 1st level. The renowned skull pillar was actually a corpse tower. The demons had used exquisite techniques to stack up tens of billions of demon corpses to construct the most terrifying structure in the entire multiverse in order to flaunt the power of the infernal realm. The legendary 5-headed dragon queen, the mother of evil dragons, Tiamat, had built her divine kingdom below the Pillar of Skulls. She greedily sucked every bit of evil energy from the evil demon's corpse and used it to strengthen herself, creating an almost immortal body of an evil dragon god. After that, when the abyssal plane occupied the Avernus plane, the demons didn't destroy the skull pillar. Instead, they used the same method to construct a massive tower opposite the skull pillar. The tower was filled with the corpses of all demons and demons who dared to oppose the abyssal plane as a form of intimidation. Howling gales suddenly swept up around Caesar, bringing with them lethal heat and bone-chilling cold. What the hell? Why did you suddenly appear here? If you had told me in advance, I could have prepared some surprises for you and found a few lustful demons to play with. The voice was very cheerful. It is indeed very sudden, but I'm talking about his power. This guy has suddenly grown to an unimaginable level, so I need some of his body parts for detailed analysis. The other voice was a little confused. Koengudyo's mad clamor, frost wings. They were the most powerful dragons, and their senses covered almost all of Avernus. Even the slightest movement would attract their attention. Caesar had been noticed by them as soon as he appeared. Looks like you came out right after dealing with Iradia's threat. You're very enthusiastic. No wonder you're a dragon that's with us. The red dragon patted the black dragon's shoulder, creating ripples in space. His crimson eyes were filled with admiration. He looked at Caesar as if he was looking at his own little brother, and naturally placed himself in the position of a big brother. The black dragon wanted to thank them for helping him stop the gods in the outer realm, but he didn't know what to say at the sight of the red dragon. At this moment, he suddenly felt a sharp pain all over his body. He turned to discover that the white dragon was holding a scale in its claws. That was his scale. The mad clamor had plucked out a scale from his neutron state, and there was a satisfied expression on its face, as if it had obtained some kind of precious treasure. Don't mind this crazy guy. He didn't mean to offend you. He offended everyone. Dios patted the black dragon's shoulder again. As his power increased, Caesar's body gradually became more and more difficult to approach. Setting aside the fact that he was immune to gravity, just the boundless radiation around him was extremely fearsome. However, this dragon who was exuding the scent of sulfur and flames had already come into contact with his body many times in a short period of time, and he didn't seem to care at all. Dios' mad clamor. Caesar opened his mouth and told him about the headless snake. Yes, we didn't see the end of it either. That thing was so big that it could reach from the abyss to the second level of hell. However, it has been dealt with. Dios nodded. That monster was obviously not right, but the red dragon was still able to act as if nothing had happened. It hasn't been dealt with, Mad Clamor said calmly. That thing is not a snake. It is an amalgamation of countless rulers of the abyss. The thing that reached into the underworld was only one of its tentacles. The white dragon's words painted a terrifying picture. Imagine that at the bottom of the abyss, a huge amalgamation was twisting, roaring, and then raising a terrifying tentacle. This tentacle crossed the gap between the abyss and hell, and all the creatures it encountered along the way were as small as ants and mosquitoes. It pierced through the barrier between the first and second levels of hell, and wanted to reach the highest point of hell. So it's a big octopus. Why did it only reach up with a small hand? The red dragon shook his head. He probably couldn't imagine such a scene. I've done a similar experiment, the white dragon said. These things evolved from the amalgamation of countless consciousnesses. When they were just born, they usually couldn't control themselves very well. Such a big thing, I'm afraid it won't be easy to burn it all. The red dragon scratched his chin. There's no need to burn it. There's a simpler way. Mad Clamor directed Dios's gaze to Caesar. I just analyzed his scales. This guy made himself into a neutron state, and all the particles in his body are tightly arranged. If he removes the limit of mass, it will cause the world to distort. Combined with his deeds of twisting the worm-eroded passage into a ball, I think he has already mastered gravity. This power represents the basic rules of the astral plane, comparable to the monsters of the planet. In front of him, there's nothing to be proud of. Then isn't he very dangerous for me? The red dragon said, but his face showed an eager expression. There's no need to try. I've already calculated it for you. The white dragon said, in 2 months you will win, but it will be difficult to kill him. If his particle form is strengthened again, those things of yours are really boring. The red dragon snorted twice, and his upright scales relaxed. His thoughts jumped again. Do you want to celebrate? Conquer the abyss for us. It's best not. Before entering the abyss, we still have to defeat the 3 pillar gods. The white dragon shook his head. Isn't conquering a celebration? Caesar said. Dios froze for a moment, then grinned, revealing a mouth full of fangs. Conquering a celebration, this sentence really resonates with me. If you weren't an evil dragon, you wouldn't be able to say such a thing. The red dragon looked at the ground. Unlike Caesar, most of the red dragon's dependents were his own descendants. Their level of life and strength were much stronger. The dragon army was galloping on the ground of hell, entangling with the tide-like demons. They were invincible and unstoppable. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.